Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 192. We are very honored to have a special guest in the garage for the second time. We discovered it was going on 2 years almost.
February 2020,
February
right before
2020,
everything kind of hit.
Before the world stopped turning. So welcome back.
Thank you. Happy to be
After
here.
all that.
Yes, yes. Happy to be here in person, too.
In person, unlike some of your coworkers?
Yeah.
Last week we had Sean Williams and Ricky Rodriguez from Cohiba and CIO. They were remote. You made the trip here from your new home in Nashville.
I did, just to see you and to bother Mike.
And to go to other shops
and
to do work. Yeah, okay.
Something like that.
Something like that. But we're happy to have you. Laurel is with Macanudo. For those that aren't familiar with Macanudo, it's been around for a long time.
Very long time.
And you've been with them for how long?
Just over 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
And we did a little bit of background on the first episode we had you on back in February of 2020, so we can kind of glance over that a little bit.
Quick little synopsis.
Exactly. A little summary for everyone at home. But this is a point before I get into it too far. I do want to mention the patreon.com/bourbonandbs podcast. You guys are amazing. We do have some raffle prizes for the patrons out there. So if you want to sign up for that between now and the intermission, we'd love to have you guys support it. There are 3 tiers, $5, $10, and $25, or you can do whatever you want on there one time and cancel it. Or now we do have a Venmo at Bourbon and BS if you want to contribute to the show. If you want us to give us a suggestion to buy a bottle and you guys want to buy it for us to review it, we have that availability. If you guys want to send us whatever the cost of the bottle is through Venmo, it makes it a lot easier. So that was something that we've been requested in the past. And so that's why we made that all available to you guys. Also, Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. By Tinder Box at Easton and Macanudo and General Cigars, we have the featured cigar, the Macanudo Inspirado Brazilian Shade.
Yes.
Limited. There are still some available at Tinder Box at Easton and also out in the wild at other brick and mortars. So check that out after we talk about that or before, whatever. And then also Altadis USA. Behind us, you can see Romeo y Julieta, Monte Cristo, H. Upman. Slightly covered by the Macanudo sign for the evening. Yeah, that's all reversed. But thank you, Josh Bentley, for another year of working on that and getting us the sponsorship. So we're going to have a new banner coming up soon, and we're happy to have that support. Also, BS Cigar Company, the Gold and Silver, are available now at Tinderbox at Easton, and also you can contact them at bscigarcompany@gmail.com or through social media. So that's all the sponsors. You guys are amazing. You guys are amazing out there for watching, review, share, subscribe, everything. We're on Facebook Live. We're on YouTube Live. And we're on all the audio podcast apps. I guess that's all the announcements.
Is that all you got?
Cool.
Got more.
All right.
Tonight we're going to be drinking the Belle Mead. This is the reserve bourbon. This is the 108.3, which used to be called the cast strength. Mm-hmm. So this is the newer product from them, and we'll get into that a little bit as well. We have a little bit left. Laurel poured it, so there's not much left.
Well, last time I was here, we had the same issue, and you willingly said, hey, pour this for everybody.
He forgot.
So
you warned me as you were pouring. That's all I'm going to say. You warned me as we were pouring.
I'm just saying, this is not our first time. This is not our first rodeo.
At least a single. Just at least an ounce and a half right there. And I want to thank also a previous guest who was on the show, Ryan Newman, who's also in the garage for this. This was a birthday present. So as you can see, I enjoyed some of it before, and now we're going to finish it off tonight and talk about it. So
cool.
Laurel, what are we smoking here?
So this is the Macanudo Brazilian Shade. So like you said earlier, it's a limited release that we did. It's actually a proprietary seed that we developed to be grown in the Bahia region of Brazil. So you get some of those like Brazilian tobacco qualities, a little bit of the sweetness, the earthiness, some spice, but it's still a super approachable cigar. I mean, you've smoked the cigar before. Nate, have you smoked this before?
I have.
Okay, so it's still only like mellow, medium, but a fuller flavor. And we're using some Matafina in there, some Carbon Cubita, some Nicaraguan Jalapa. So it's just a nice blend of.
What's the second one there? I'm familiar with the other two.
Dominican Carmen Cubita. So it's
that one.
Okay, so it's
the Cabanera.
The Cabanera. So
Cabernet.
The nature of it has a little bit more of a sweetness to it, and it's a little bit more subdued.
Okay.
So we don't use it in a lot of product, but because this one is special and limited, there's just not a lot of yield on it.
Okay.
So we were able to use it for this. So it is limited. Hopefully We'll have it again in the future. The problem is there's just not a lot of yield from the tobacco.
Okay.
But the thing that makes this unique is that typically with a Connecticut shade, whether it be from Ecuador or from the Connecticut River Valley, you get a little bit more of just that inherent bitterness by the nature of the tobacco. And this does not have that at all. It has a little bit more of that sweetness, a little bit more of those sort of quintessential Brazilian flavors that you would expect from Brazilian tobacco. And then next on the docket, we have the Inspirado Green, which is Brazilian Arapiraca, a little bit more full-bodied, a little bit beefier, robust. So we kind of started with the mellower one and we'll work our way. But the theme here is, Brazilian tobacco.
Brazilian. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the Belle Mead to go along with it, we're doing the opposite. We're doing the higher proof and going down to the more classic, which is a lower proof.
Yeah.
Which is, again, Nashville, which is where you just
And I do appreciate the sentiment.
There you go. You're welcome. You're welcome. We did another bottle from Belle Mead before.
Okay.
We did the classic, I think, way back, and then we also did
episode 119.
What was it that Tyler brought? The Greenbrier.
Nelson Greenbrier.
Yeah. Which is out of the same.
Out of
Okay.
this distillery.
I haven't had this before.
All right. Well,
So,
I'm gonna take a sip,
cheers.
and then I'm sharing right now as well. So I encourage you guys to do the same.
Cheers, viewers.
It's good when we all take a sip at the same time. It's good on the audio. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
people listening in their car right now.
What is it, ASMR?
I don't know what that means. I think I'm supposed to. What is it?
It's like you can go on YouTube and you watch all the videos of people like chewing.
But it's weird though.
Yeah, it's all like
It's weird shit. It's not.
it is. It's like chewing or
So that wasn't that. I don't think.
but there's like
So that was us
sipping. There's
sipping.
people talking really slowly, really softly, just like weird everyday noises that apparently are soothing to people. I personally don't like the sound of people chewing or sipping.
No, especially with the mouth open.
Yes. Oh yes, open mouth chewers, probably one of my biggest pet peeves.
Have you ever caught yourself doing that? Like you're doing it on your own. You're like, wait, I just chewed my mouth open. Does that ever happen?
No.
Sean's a couple nods out in the audience here.
Sean's probably one of those gum clackers, like.
My husband, he has that condition. There's a name for it.
As you guys go on this tangent, I'm gonna keep sharing.
That's
Go ahead. I'm listening.
where
Sure
you
they are
just
too.
there's a visceral reaction to the sound of someone chewing, and I literally cannot eat chips in the house. Like I cannot eat chips around him because I just watch his blood pressure rise. So like or
So you
milk
eat chips
duds.
outside?
I'm not allowed. Like I don't eat milk duds around him. Like if we go to a
These are very
movie,
specific.
I can't eat. Yeah,
What about other
because
candies?
no,
Whoppers?
it's like
Can you do a
mostly
Whopper?
chips and milk duds are like no's.
Why?
I would think Butterfinger
like,
might be in
like
that.
candy bars.
No, it's
Just milk
it's
duds.
just like I think the quiet of the movie. Like I only ever get milk duds if we go to a movie because
Well,
like
that's
when,
why it's specific.
when
then,
do you
I mean,
ever
obviously.
eat? But then it's like it's super quiet, so you can just like hear it very subtly. And I try to be extra quiet and like.
Do you ever stop eating your? Well, tangent right now. This is like the first part, but do you stop reaching into the popcorn like when it's a really quiet scene in the movie theater?
Yes. Yes.
No hesitation. 'Cause I've done
For
that.
sure.
Where I'm like literally like reaching in there, and all of a sudden like just like goes to black and everything. I'm just like my hands just in the butter. At this
Yeah,
point.
you're
I'm
just
like,
waiting. Like, okay, there has to be an
Come on,
action
man,
scene
like-
soon, right?
fine.
It's super quiet, and you hear the
God
one
damn.
crunch of the
Yeah,
popcorn.
yeah. All right. What were we talking about? Cigars?
Belle Mead.
Well, we were.
or-
Let's get into the cigar a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah.
So you said is it a yield thing? Why this is a limited? Is this one of those projects? I feel like sometimes in the cigar world, you'll do a project limited edition,
Mhm.
not necessarily because of limited tobacco or which is very common, but sometimes it's to test the waters with a product. You do like a one time, like a limited edition or an annual release, and then if it has success and you have the availability with tobacco, then you're like, hey, that was really well received.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of demand out in the field, out in from the consumers. They want more of it.
Yeah.
Do you try it again? I mean, is this one of those products, or is it kind of just a one and done?
So
What's the thought process there? Do you think you're going to use some of the tobaccos like that? Because it's true Connecticut seed grown in Brazil. Is that right?
yes.
Or no? Yeah.
Yes. So it's definitely twofold, right? So we obviously want to test the waters if we're going to release something limitedly that we have the means to do again in a year or two and it's well received, then I think it would be advantageous to release it again, right? But part of
If
it
you have
too,
the tobacco.
if we have the tobacco, part of it too is the yield. Like we don't have factories in Brazil. You know,
Okay.
it's all independent farmers. So there's only so much that we can get.
Kind of like Cameroon.
Correct. I mean, you know, you had Ricky on here last week, right?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
with the Amazon Basin series, the
Yeah.
Mortal Coil, same thing. There's only so much. And Brazil isn't really like they're known for tobacco in a sense for it's fairly ubiquitous at this point. And, you know, well known to some extent, but Brazil isn't necessarily known for growing tobacco.
Right.
That's not their bread and butter, right?
Yeah.
It's probably what, coffee? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
Honduras, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, you have so much dedicated space to actually growing tobacco, whereas Brazil, you just don't.
But it's becoming more and more common.
Yes. Yeah.
Commonly used in, especially as like wrapper leaf.
Mhm.
I mean, as we
Arapiraca, and then we're using Matafina in the blend of this, and then the Brazilian shade.
But
So
the Connecticut seed is very unique
Yes.
coming out of Brazil.
Yeah.
Which I find like you see Plasencia is doing that in Nicaragua, and then some other companies I think are following the footsteps of like, you know, Plasencia with you guys doing this, and like they're taking that Connecticut seed and growing it other places than Ecuador, which was the biggest
Ecuador,
one.
Connecticut, River Valley. Yeah. You know, and this is a hybrid seed. It's something that we developed to do. So I think it's like 7 years it takes to develop a seed that is going to actually be the same year to year. You know, we don't typically use anything that is a hybrid for, you know, year-round releases or
regular production.
Thank you. Regular. Apparently, the one sip of bourbon already has me.
You're done.
Thank you, Nate. Regular production. That is the phrase I was looking for. But because we know how it's going to perform year to year.
Yeah.
And you know, it's very similar to like wine or coffee, where certain grapes, right? They're grown in certain regions because they're going to yield a certain flavor, and you know how that growing region, the soil, the climate affects it. Connecticut shade is very persnickety, so we can't really grow it. We can't just say, oh, we're going to grow Connecticut shade here just because we want to. I mean, it just doesn't necessarily perform how we want it to. So we had to be pretty strategic about growing it in that area. And to my knowledge, the only other company to use a Connecticut shade from Brazil was Villiger.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So why did it take 7 years to develop that seed?
Because you have to get it to be where it's going to basically be like, you know, there's no variance.
Gotcha.
So because you can't just like crossbreed them and get exactly what you want. You kind of have to play with it to get what you need for the genetics of it. So yeah, I mean, at this point, it was a well-received cigar. I like it. Maybe I'm biased. I don't know. Hopefully you guys like it too.
Did you sell out?
Yeah, we sold out pretty quickly. We only did a few thousand boxes, in 2 different sizes. So I like Connecticut shade. Like I love our Inspirado white, but I don't find myself reaching for it all the time. But this particular cigar
today in the shop.
Yeah. But I've also been smoking orange all week, so I had to deviate a little bit. Mike's only been feeding me orange. So when I saw the white, I was like, oh, you know, might as well do something different.
Like how Mike has to, okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Well, I sent him the cigars.
Oh,
so.
Fair. Well, let's go into it a little bit further. So that's where I think people can be confused with this. And that's why I feel fortunate to have you on the show, because Macanito is, and we've talked about this before, you hear it all the time, I'm sure. It's known for the cafe series. Like that's the staple. That's your best selling SKUs, if I'm not mistaken. And
Correct.
You've got like 26 of them or something like that.
Yeah. Like
including the Ascot's miniature.
The Ascot is our #1 seller,
That's
not just
insane.
from Macanudo, but from our entire company. Portofino, Hyde Park. Those are, top sellers. Court.
Hampton Court.
So,
But that's what you guys are like. That's what Macanito is known for.
Yes.
Before you came into the role you're in as is it officially like the brand ambassador? Is that the title?
yeah, that'd be my official title.
But you also have your hands on some of the blending processes, right? Like you get your creativity, your opinion, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But when you came into this, we had what the cafe series. You had Maduro. You had like the
Cruel 1968.
Yep.
The vintage series, the 97 and the 2006.
So you had some of these staples.
Yeah. So when
then the Inspirado line hit
in 2016. So I came in 2016, right when the orange was released in the United States, because the orange was originally released in Europe in 2014. So, I mean, Macanudo has been around for a long time. We acquired it in 1968. We brought it to the States in 1971, but it's been around as a name, as a front mark of punch since 1868. But the bulk of our development has only been the last 5 years. So it has gotten easier in the last couple of years because the knee-jerk reaction, now that the Inspirado series has kind of taken root within the industry.
Yeah.
It used to be, oh, Macanito, that's too mellow, or that was my grandfather's cigar, or that's what I started on, and now it was kind of a stepping stone cigar, and I've, graduated to something else. And we didn't want a cigar to just have somebody start out and then move on to something new. With the Inspirado series, you can kind of like work your way through the whole line, right? The white, the orange, maybe more approachable. The green and the black, maybe more middle of the road, and the red is going to be fuller bodied. So we definitely wanted to make sure we were offering something that everybody could enjoy.
Yeah, it's basically, yeah, I think it's more contemporary. It's more like what the market is today versus
for sure.
your staple ones. And
For sure.
obviously still, I mean, you say it's the number one selling blend is the cafe in certain
Mhm.
sizes
Yeah.
for a reason. I mean, there's still people out there. And that's one of those things that I remember years ago, I was at a wedding and I brought like cigars that I liked and everything like that. I thought I was bringing some like mild to medium for other people.
Yeah.
And the groom's father brought a box of Hyde Parks.
Okay.
And there were a bunch of people there that they smoked. They didn't like, they weren't regular smokers, whatever. And they were just like, man, this is like the best cigar I've ever had. And that's just, it's mild, it's smooth.
Mhm.
It's an everyday cigar for
Yeah.
pretty much anyone that smokes or doesn't smoke. To people that smoke fuller bodied stuff, that's not necessarily something they gravitate towards.
Yes. And I think that we still, I mean, our number one seller for Inspirato is actually still the white. Now, the white is a great cigar, but I think there's still sort of the perception of Macanito just being mellow. I mean, we offer obviously like the black, the green, the red, some of like our vintage 97, even like the 68 is a little bit full on the fuller end.
It is.
And so the people who smoke the orange or the green or the black or the red or whatever enjoy it. But I think there's still sort of that perception shifting where people are getting used to Macanito not just being mellow.
Well, I think that's a big part of your role in the last 5 years, honestly.
Yeah.
And then this is not the first limited edition. I think the last time you were on, we had and I think we argued about, not argued, you corrected me, how you say it, which I had that problem last week with the
Rick and Sean.
Zocalo.
Or Zocalo.
I say Zocalo, and I'm just getting shit the whole time. So with Palladium?
Palladium. Yeah, so we had the Palladium, we had the Heritage Nuevo.
2 weeks in a row, I can't say it.
It's okay, I'll let it slide.
I feel like you're not going to.
Wow.
But
I'm going to hold a grudge forever and ever.
I mean, listen back to the tape of the last one. Anyways, no, this is your second limited?
Third.
The Palladium.
Heritage Nuevo.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm trying to remember the timeline. Which one came first? Palladium, I want to say was August of 2019. 2019. And then Heritage Nuevo was October of 2019. And what why am I getting a head shake over there? From
you weren't even with the company.
Yeah. All right. When did we release it then? It was 2019. It wasn't 2020 because we weren't at the trade show. So it must have been 2019. And thank you. Thank you for that validation. So we did the Palladium in August. We did the Heritage Nuevo in October. And then we released the green August of 2020. And then this one, oh my God, what month is it now? October. So we released this in
it's October.
Yeah. We released this one in the spring.
All right. And you're sold out. I think it's it's fun because, again, branching off of the original like Macanito core lines and doing this Inspirato. And I remember the orange came out. That was the first one of the Inspiratos, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And that was the story was it was a European blend.
Correct.
Was it under the name Macanito Inspirato?
It was, yeah. So it was the Macanito Inspirato Orange, and it was developed originally for our European market to sit on the shelf and compete with its Cuban counterparts. I mean, it definitely was helpful that we were also like 10 euro less than the Cuban counterparts because you could get a great cigar for a really reasonable price. And with the success in Europe, we subsequently brought it to the United States in 2016, and it actually got a top 25 rating in Cigar Aficionado. And now take ratings as you will, but I mean, for Macanito, it has been a very long time since we've gotten top 25 in Cigar Aficionado, and it just did wonders for the brand. And it was awesome to kind of bring that recognition back to a cigar that people don't necessarily think being in that category from Macanito. And then we released the black and the white in 2017, the red in 2018, and then we took a year off and we did the limiteds in 2019. Yeah. And we did this one in 20 and then this one this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because typically when we develop a new blend, it starts in the US and then it branches out to like Europe and Canada and like Asia. And so it was interesting to see it start there and then come here and kind of reverse order. But then everything we've released afterwards has started here and then gone to be released elsewhere.
Yeah, it is. I think that's just, it was a kind of I thought it was interesting when the orange came in and I was smoking it. I'm like, yeah, this is completely different with the Macanito brand on it. Absolutely different. So
for me, the Macanito blend that kind of changed my perception was the Cru Royale.
Okay.
Because that was the first time I had remembered smoking a Macanudo thinking, oh my gosh, this cigar actually has some body to it. This has some strength and a lot of flavor to it.
Yeah.
So obviously that was before the Inspirato ever came out, but I was recent in the industry at that time. But I was like, wow, this kind of changes my mind of what, because at that point it was the cafe and the gold that I was familiar with.
Sure, which are pretty similar, just different primings.
Yeah.
But
so when the Cru Royale came out, I was like, all right, this is a cigar that's actually got some punch to it. I like this.
Yeah. And I think when the 1968 and the Cru Royale came out, it was sort of a weird time for Macanudo because people who wanted a fuller bodied cigar didn't think about that brand. And people who wanted Macanudo didn't think about a fuller bodied cigar. So they kind of just fell into this, like kind of fell into the cracks, but it's just, they're both really great cigars. The Macanudo 1968, I've said it before, you can probably go back and watch other interviews. It is in my opinion, the dark horse, not only of Macanudo, but of our portfolio. Okay. I mean, it is a really underrated cigar that is just fantastic. I love this.
Well, one of our listeners said that was his favorite.
Okay.
1968.
Thank you, listener, for validating my statement.
Sean Anderson.
Okay. Yeah. Love the 68. It's hard for me to find.
Oh,
well, I think part of it too is that, so to speak to Sean's point also, you said love the 68, hard to find, is it sometimes you have that in a portfolio, is that it's a great cigar, but it doesn't sell.
Yeah. So
from the retailer side of it, they're like, I like it too. It just, we don't get asked for it. So
well, everybody wants what's new and shiny and exciting. I mean, I have the same issue with some of our other lines, like the CAO Cameroon. Love that cigar. Well, granted, we just did like a refresh on the packaging and released a new size. So that's probably not a great example. But even like the Excalibur Cameroon or the Dark Knight, before we did any sort of like revamp on them. I mean, there's a reason these cigars have been around for a very long time, right? Yeah. So I kind of like to find the hidden gems, like kind of the forgotten heritage blends that people don't necessarily think about, because it's great to have what's new and fun and exciting, but it's also nice to smoke what's been around for a long time that people kind of just look over.
Was it the 97 Maduro that had that
the metal ring?
Yeah.
That was good marketing.
That was a great
people
cigar.
Remember that for sure. It was a good cigar. Yeah, it is.
Cigar.
It's still
still around. Our 2006 also has that metal band. So those are both the vintage years. So 97 actually has a broadleaf from 1997, and then the 2006 has the 2006 Connecticut shade wrapper. So those are fun. I like the 97. It's actually one of the only cigars prior to both the shade and the Inspirado Green that we use any Brazilian tobacco for.
Yeah.
So that and the Cru Royale are the only two other Macanudos that used Mata Fina.
When this came out, Laurel, what were your initial thoughts of doing a limited one like this? Because the last one, the Palladium, was also a milder cigar. It had a white, like a silver.
Yeah, so that
also.
Dare I say like a palladium color?
Palladium, yeah, no, it's great. It's great color, great color. I love it. It's favorite. But when this came out, back to my question.
Yes,
again, you're gonna let that go. Yeah, right. Yeah, like I said, you're not. But with this, obviously coming off the green, this had already been out, right? So the Brazil was like and this was delayed, like a lot of cigars can be, right? A lot of products lines can be. So this I remember was being promoted for a while, and then this came out. The green came out, and then it was within a year, right?
Yeah, because
this came out with the Brazilian, so you had two efforts back to back.
Yes.
What were your thoughts of how this was going to be received versus how it was received? Because I don't think people talk about that as much. It's all about the results. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a lot of times I think you see it come out, and you're like, I mean, it sounds good, but you just came out with the Brazilian. And you're like, well, this is totally different.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, we had high hopes that it would be well received. I tend to smoke more like medium to full cigars. So I'm sort of in the camp of wanting something that's a little bit more full bodied. And that's something so I'm actually coming out with my own event cigar that I'm working on. So I'm going down to our factory going down to the factory in December to work on it.
So it'll be a Macanudo, is it under Inspirado line? Or
so it'll be, so you know how like Rick has his event cigars and Sean has the Silencio? Yeah. So like they're event only cigars. So I'm going to be doing something. So that'll be kind of in my.
You can't give us any information.
No.
What's the name of it going to be?
I don't know yet. It's in its
infancy,
know, or are you
just
Steve.
Acting like you don't know.
I don't know.
But do you have like a top two like choices?
I do.
You want to run it by the audience?
Not really.
Okay.
She does not need our approval.
Anyone out there listening? Sean, I see Ray out there. We see a couple other people. If you guys have any suggestions, we'll take suggestions in the suggestion box right now.
So while I normally I kind of lean towards that, medium to fuller body and strength, I was excited about the Brazilian Shade, one, because it was just different. There's not a lot of other people out there doing it.
Right.
And I liked it kind of coming off of the release of the Green. The Green was super well received, and Brazilian tobacco, we're kind of in, like we talked about a little bit earlier, to circle back, is just like Brazilian tobacco is becoming popular. Like what Nicaragua a couple years ago, is just like everything was like Nicaragua heavy. Yeah. And I feel like Brazil, we're kind of on the cusp of, you know, a Brazilian tobacco boom. And I think it just, we released it at a good time. And the thing is, it's still mellower, but it's fuller flavor. I don't mind something that's going to be a little bit mellower in strength. I'm more about the flavor. Yeah. Honestly, the cigar could be a complete, you know, little powerhouse, like all Ligero, which I guess inherently is going to be a little bit more bitter. So you'd still get some flavor. But for me, it's not so much about the strength as it is the flavor. So I feel like this is a good compromise. Yeah. So I was excited about it. And we started talking about it pretty far ahead of its release. So we had known about it for a while, kind of being released in conjunction with the Green. So
it's part of the plan a little bit. Yeah. So I do want to comment here, and then I'm going to ask Nate what he thinks of this. Is Freddie Bird out there, who's, as it says on there, a top fan, didn't even get a notification. We were talking about that today, Laurel. Yeah. I do want to mention that Laurel, for a time, was the reigning champ on views. Yeah, you know, the Bourbon and BS podcast.
I don't let that get to my head at all.
5.something.
5.6.
About 5.
We talked about it earlier.
5.6K views. When Laurel was on last time, she was dethroned by Nicholas Perdomo III.
Yeah, she didn't even have the record for a year.
You don't say it like that. I mean,
it's not a dig at her.
Wow, yeah.
Had the belt.
You know what? Out of
on the wall before it was
192 episodes. I mean, I'll take number 2 viewership.
I like that.
I mean, I'll concede.
All right. Well, my point is that I was trying to explain to Laurel as a side note. So anyone listening on the audio, when I say this a lot, is not just to pump up, you know, the views and the listeners, but, you know, definitely subscribe, follow the page, follow the Bourbon and BS community page, you know, turn on notifications, because this has happened a lot in the social media world. It happens all the time, but within the last year, it changed a lot where the algorithms changed. You know, people aren't getting the notifications. We're certainly not boosting this through sponsorship as far as dollars put it out there. So, yeah, Freddie, make sure you check your notifications and that you are turned on for the Bourbon and BS podcast page. If you watch on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to that. You'll get an email. I typically get an email when we go live as well. So this is part of it. But Freddie, glad to have you on, and anyone else, if you guys want to share it to any of the pages you like so that people can join the conversation while we have Laurel in the garage, because she loves answering any questions too.
Totally.
Nate, what do you think of this?
This cigar actually surprised me the first time I had it, because it came out so close to the Inspirato Green. I was expecting something more like that, even though it's got this lighter shade. So I was pleasantly surprised, because I do like Connecticut shade. So I just like the fact that this has kind of that thick, creamy texture of the smoke.
And it doesn't have that bitterness.
Correct. And it does have a very unique flavor to it. So one of my favorite milder cigars, this kind of reminds me of, it's Monte Cristo White, which is Ecuadorian Connecticut. This is Brazilian Connecticut, but they still have that thick, creamy texture to the smoke, but a very different flavor profile. Yeah. And I enjoy this.
Yeah. Even if you look at the wrapper itself, it almost has, a little bit more of that pliable texture to it. It's not quite as thin and brittle as like a traditional Connecticut shade.
It's a little toothy, actually.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily common.
Yeah. Can we ask the audience what they think of it?
We can.
I know Sean's smoking it. Sean, what do you think?
Mike, are you smoking it? You know, you said you know your line and the competitor's line. You want to go ahead and let us know. Mike Sauerball, first time caller, long time listener. If you can grab the mic, Brian, would you grab the mic for him? Thank you, Ryan. Give Brian a chance. This is the quietest I've heard Mike since I've known him. Just talk into
I would compare it to a.
You got to actually like hold it up. There you go.
I would compare it to more of a Monte Cristo White.
Yeah.
At a more reasonable price.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like, what is it? Suggested is what, $11?
$11.
So $11, and it's a limited run.
16.
Yeah.
For the average working man, $5 times 10 is $50. So, Being that I've smoked a lot of cigars in my 30 years.
From
30
both
years
companies.
of cigar smoking. He's not 30 years old, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I am not.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
But I would say that it varies for me. Just depends on the time of day and what you've had to eat. What you had to drink. I mean, different cigars over the years, people go, what do you think of it? I go, well, it just really depends. What did you have to eat for lunch? What are you drinking?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big Tab drinker, which I can't find any listeners out there that can get a whole Tab.
I was going to lean on Tab soda.
So I'm old school.
Message the page.
Coke, what are you doing?
We need a nationwide search for Tab.
And I put this
For those younger listeners, that is a soda
I will
or
pay
a pop.
$24 a 12-pack.
The first time I worked with him, you had a bunch of tab in the back. You had a bunch of tab in the back of your car. You're like, I just cleaned out whatever grocery store had it.
Yeah, well, it's hard to get.
Yeah. They don't make it anymore, right?
Coca-Cola decided to get rid of it.
I wish I could make banners from here. I just put up Tab.
I actually think this goes really well with the Belle Mead, though,
thought you were
because the
gonna
Belle
say
Mead
Tab.
has the sweetness to it, and it kind of brings out the sweetness in the cigar.
does.
I'm curious as to how this is going to go with the regular sour mash.
Well, just throw it back. I can pour it for you if you want.
No, we
Sean,
have
you wanna chime in here.
Yeah, because we have to make sure we have enough of this left to do the review at the.
Oh, sure.
Sean knows how to work that mic.
Yes, I enjoy it. It's kind of refreshing. I mostly like medium full cigars. It's nice to have something a little more on the milder, maybe the medium side. The retrohale's got a great flavor too. I really enjoy the retrohale in it. So,
It's got like a woody spice in the retrohale.
Yeah, it's got you definitely taste a little more of the medium side of it when you do a retro, is whereas you just do a regular. Do it yourself. Hello.
No, they're commenting on the light that's flashing. You can't really see it on screen. I think you can see it a little bit.
Yeah, you can see a little.
Yeah, a little bit in the banner.
Yeah,
there's a flashing light back here.
For me, this
Maybe
is like
stage hands out here.
No, for me, this is like first cigar of the day, like earlier in the day type of smoke. Just because, especially on a fresh palate, this would be a good cigar to go to. Because if all three of us typically smoke medium to full body cigars.
Yeah.
If you smoke 4, medium full cigars and then go to this, I don't think your palate's going to really be able to appreciate the flavor and blend of this tobacco.
Yeah, you're right. No, I agree with you guys. I think this is it's different. Like, it's unique. Like you mentioned, like, Monte Cristo White, or you did, Nate, and then you commented on it, Mike, it's different. It's definitely different. It has some similarities, but I mean, the blended tobacco is so unique that I like it because, yes, it's a milder cigar, but I do get that retrohale that you're talking about. And I said it's like a woody spice to it almost. It's a unique flavor profile that kind of goes all together with it, but it is on the lighter side. I agree. Kind of segueing into the Belle Mead, I didn't know what to think of this, especially with it being a little bit a lighter bodied cigar, but it has a lot of flavor. It's got those unique characteristics that you put it together with this Belle Mead. This is the 108.3 reserve, so this is the newer product. But this is one that I thought was going to overpower it, honestly. When we got into this and we were like, oh, let's start with that, I thought it was going to really kind of overpower the cigar. It has not. I think this has a lot of sweetness to it. What do you think of the bourbon by itself?
Oh, I think it's great. And if I take a sip of the bourbon, but in this order in particular, if I take a sip of the bourbon and then I puff the cigar, if I let it linger on my palate, I almost get like caramel notes.
Yeah, there's definitely caramel.
But it's not. But the cigar really brings it out, because if I just have the bourbon and it sits, you get like a sweetness, but it's sort of nondescript. But the cigar almost brings out like that specific, more discerning, like caramel flavor.
Yeah.
Which I dig. I love caramel. So,
This definitely has that. It definitely has that. Is it caramel or caramel?
I think it's technically caramel, but I sound like
it.
really, I feel like I sound pretentious when I say caramel. So I say caramel or caramel.
There's caramel with only one A, and then there's caramel,
which is like CRAR. Yeah.
Yeah, there's CARMEL, and then there's CARAMEL.
I don't know, because there's
like caramel.
Because there's like Carmel by the sea in California, like over.
I hope everyone's learning something tonight.
But I think technically it's supposed to be CARAMEL.
How do you say like Crayola?
Crayons.
What is it?
Crayons.
Crayons.
Crayons. Crayons.
Are you
like crayons?
So like one syllable. Crayons.
Yeah, I'm crayons. That's how I grew up saying it.
So yeah, it's definitely like I always put an emphasis on the Y.
How do you say? I say root beer.
Root beer.
Root.
Root.
Does anyone else say root beer? Jesus, I'm alone on that.
What's that?
What, you know what I meant.
Hey, Steve, what's that little stream of water behind?
It's a creek. No, it's a creek. I say creek. I say creek. All right, enough with the dialects here. So you can give a little bit more history, Nate, too. But this is a cool history because this is it goes back to the 1800s as well with the Belle Mead name.
Oh, okay.
And there's
I know nothing about that.
A lot of history, and I kind of did a refresher and forgot a lot of it. But they actually brought this out. So it's what's the distillery?
Nelson Greenbrier.
Nelson Greenbrier. So the Nelson family back in, I think it was 2006. Does that sound right? So 2006, the descendants of the family that was all about this, they were literally driving with their dad to a butcher shop or something like that.
Yeah.
And they were running low on gas, and they pulled off, and they noticed this sign. I can't believe they didn't know. I mean, they knew about it, but the fact that this was the story that they have is that they saw this sign on the side of the road. It's like one of those historic signs.
Yeah.
And it was about the Nelson Greenbrier distillery.
Okay.
And they decided to basically kind of revamp it. And there was a lot of some failed efforts. Yeah, you can have a sip. There's not a whole lot left.
Sorry.
There we go, man.
Don't let Laurel pour it. But it's something that they had the family history. They knew about it, but it had been dormant. So they were one of the many distilleries, and they're based out of Tennessee. But there's one of the many distilleries that basically struggled through Prohibition.
Okay.
And that was the big kind of, there's the sign that he's got there. So the brothers basically decided to kind of get back into it. The Belle Mead name is from what you had heard, the Belle Mead plantation and everything like that. The horses on it have significance. I don't know if you have that pulled up on the horses, but the one on the right, let me see that label actually, because I think it actually has
gives you the little.
I don't know if it has the names of it. They had the names to it, but this SW and Company here, I don't know if you can pull that up, Nate, because this is actually from the original. The Belle Mead was actually sourced, so it wasn't through the Nelson Greenbrier distillery, but this Belle Mead product was actually sourced elsewhere from this company, which they actually, when they revamped this, the name of it, they reached out to the family descendants of that distillery.
Sperry Wade
and Company. So that one is where, so they reached out to them for this original artwork and everything, and then that is kind of a ode to the family there. They kept that on there. And if you can look it up while I'm talking, the horses on here, they both have names to them, and it was from the major. The one on the right, I know, was something. I'm kind of piecing this together based on memory here, but it was Secretariat, and along with another. This was like the beginning of that. I don't know if you can find that, Nate.
I'm looking.
All right. But the other one, again, I mean, so there's a lot of history basically on this. And so this was originally sourced, and they did the same thing with this. This is an MGP product. This is something we were talking about earlier, the MGP in Indiana. So this 108.3 proof, they actually switched it. This was the cast strength product initially. I think it came out in 2018. This is all going to be off. Anyone out there wants to fact check me, that's fine, because I'm trying to do this off of memory. But this one, the cast strength, they were doing in these small batches, and there was obviously a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences from batch to batch.
Sure.
And so what they did is that they made this choice. So they were ranging from 7 to 11 age barrels that they were doing these blends from MGP.
On the reserve, 7 to 11 years.
That's what I'm trying to go back to here, though. Sorry, thank you for clarifying. But the 108.3, they thought that was the sweet spot of all of the different cast strengths that they were doing. So they rebranded this as 108.3 proof instead of the cast strength, which it had like the individual more information on it. It's a high rye. They won't necessarily release the details of it on the old cast strengths. They had a little bit more information, but with this 108.3, all they're saying is, from what I could find, is that it's 7 to 11 years, sometimes older barrels, and it's something that they do a high rye content, which you can definitely tell on it. But it's a lot sweeter than I thought it'd be.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
what else do you got?
So typically they're doing a couple different mash bills and then a couple different yeast strains.
Right.
So you have multiple mash bills going into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they list that one as just high rye.
Yeah.
The sour mash straight whiskey, they list that as a 30% rye, even though it's a blend as well. Right. On your horses comment.
Yeah.
The horse on the right is Bonnie Scotland, one of the founders of the Northern Dancer bloodline.
Okay.
Some of the descendants of this bloodline include Seabiscuit, War Admiral, Man of War, Secretariat, California Chrome, American Pharaoh, and Nyquist.
Wow.
So quite the bloodline. What's the other one called? Does it say?
They do not say on their website the other horse.
It wasn't as
just to
popular.
even it out.
Mr. Ed.
It wasn't
Aesthetics.
Mr. Ed. It was an interesting name. I'm gonna look it up while we talk about what you guys think of it. But
Is this something that you guys drink in your free time, or is it something that
whiskey, yeah, absolutely.
this
Yeah,
one in particular?
pretty much daily.
I don't know if this is something
Most
that you
mornings.
like, right after you brush your teeth, get that toothpaste taste out of your mouth.
With it.
But if this is something that you drink just because you enjoy it, or if this is more just like a feature of the.
So the featured one with the reserve, the 108.3, this is the first time having it. So
Oh,
this
okay.
was, again, this was a birthday gift beginning of this month from
Ryan.
Ryan Newman, manager of Royale Cigar Lounge in Columbus, Ohio. Check him out as well. But that was the first time I actually had this one, and I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
The other, the sour mash or the straight or the classic, I've had several times.
Okay.
I really enjoyed this. It was funny. I had it once, very small amount before. And then when I was flying to Boston, would have been, a year or two ago? What was it? But Boston.
It was before that because
Boston, sorry.
it was
Sorry
longer.
about that.
It was longer ago
Fucking
than that
Boston.
because you were telling Jonathan and
It
Ricky.
was 2 Januaries. So it wasn't last January. It was the January before that.
Yeah.
I was going to a wedding in Boston. And so we had a layover in Nashville. And so I asked, what do they have? Of course, it was 9 a.m. So, yeah, some mornings I do have it. And they had said, well, we have a local distillery. And they did Belle Mead. And I had it before.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was one of those things. So with you just moving to Nashville, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the second part of the show. But this was something that made sense that, we had this already. So Nate went and picked up the straight or the classic there.
Nice.
And it's just it's a nice bottle. I mean, for the price and everything else,
Yeah.
I think
I've never
What
had.
is the price on it?
so on this one here, the Belle Mead Reserve, I think in the state of Ohio, is pushing $70 to $80.
It's $69.99.
Yeah, $70. So I know you can find it in Indiana for a little less, I believe, but this, Ohio State mandated. But it does actually pull a little bit on the secondary. I know Ryan was saying you picked it up for what? I thought you said 79.
I think it went to 80.
Yeah. So
I looked at OHLQ this week and it had it listed as 70, and there were a couple places around that had it.
And there won't be any places
No.
in the state of Ohio that'll be more. It's all state.
correct.
Yeah.
So it could have been 69 with tax. You're pushing mid 70s.
Maybe that's what I was saying. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Mike's pulling up. They have mini bottles
Oh,
as well.
I love that.
Baby bottles. That's for the kids.
Just for the morning for you.
Sean, I don't know. I can't tell
For
if
the
Sean.
Yeah,
Your
exactly.
commute to work.
I can't tell if Sean Anderson's joking or serious, but he said he found the name of the other horse, and I don't know if he's.
No, it's Brown Dick. No, he's right. He's
Okay.
absolutely right. Yeah. So I knew it was something, but I didn't want to say the wrong thing. But it is
Okay.
called, the horse on the left as you're looking at it is Brown Dick. And I don't think that.
Mike can't keep it together.
So there's a certain way horses are named.
Probably a guy
and
named
I can
Richard.
tell you
how
how
about
this
that?
happens.
Named after his grandfather, Richard. Jesus. Get you.
Keep it up here, Sean. Come on.
It's too late. So, yeah. What do you.
Well, it's very
think,
good.
Nate? Oh, good. The Brown Dick or the. You set that over there.
We haven't had enough alcohol.
No, no, we have not. All right, Nate, what do you think of the Reserve 108.3?
I like the flavor. It's got quite a bit of spice to it, but not an overwhelming amount of heat, which is kind of nice. I think $70 for it, I think might be pushing it a little bit.
Why is that? What are you expecting for $70?
Well, so typically if you're buying something at 70, I would be thinking you're getting either a cask strength, something that's going to be a lot more robust, bold, 115 to 130 proof, or something that might come across a little smoother than what this does.
Okay.
It's a good bottle. The first time I've ever had it, I just don't think I would drop $70 on it.
So
For me,
as a layman, I know jack shit about bourbon. And to be honest, I don't drink it all that often.
Okay.
I would buy this bottle.
You would.
I would.
For
I don't know if
$69.99.
it's a hard pill to swallow when I don't necessarily appreciate bourbon. It's hard because I don't want to say I don't appreciate it, but the difference in price to me, I don't know if I have a discerning enough palate for it to justify the price. But out of a lot of bourbons I've tried, this has been one of my favorites. So I guess to justify the price, maybe.
Okay. I think, $60 to $70 anymore. I mean, for what used to be called cast strength, they can't call it that anymore because it's not going to be necessarily up that way of the 110 and up, 115 and up. And
well, and they did that to basically get more. I lost it. But
consistency.
Yes, but from batch to batch. Yeah, we're all team
effort, guys. Neato. What?
What's the age statement on that
So
bottle?
it's a blend of 7 to 11, sometimes older, but it's a blend of different barrels.
And is it a limited release or is it available all the time? But it's just
I think it's smaller production.
Yeah, limited quantity.
Okay.
But,
oh, is
so
that
in the state of Ohio? It's allocated, is what Ryan's saying there.
Okay.
Pass me the bottle. Please.
What is this eye roll over here?
Well, and I don't think we talked about where this is actually coming out of.
I said that, yeah, MGP.
Okay.
Yeah, and they don't really shy away from that, honestly. And I think that is something that I like this product because they did. What was the SW?
Sperry Wade.
I like that they kind of did that. They're not really shying away from the fact that this is being sourced from somewhere else.
But they're bottling it at their distillery at Nelson Greenbrier. So it's MGP Indiana. Then they ship it to Tennessee and it's bottled there.
Okay.
Sean, you're having some.
The more you know.
Have you had some of this before? No, have you had it before? You haven't had it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very good.
Sean, give your opinion on it, and then we can kind of get into the pairing a little bit here.
I enjoy it a lot. As Nate likes to say, a lot of the viscosity of it. It has a lot of legs. I mean, when you it's really oily. And it does have a good flavor. It brings out the caramel notes for sure with the cigar.
Thank you for that validation, Sean.
Yes. I got you, girl. I really enjoyed it. It's smooth in the beginning, a little bit of burn in the end, but not enough to really kind of overwhelm you at all. It's a good compliment with both cigar. I'll rate it later. But anyway, yeah, I definitely have to try this again.
I mean, from what I read, and I get what they're doing with the 1083, like the fact that they did proof it down a little bit, but it was more consistency as opposed to doing the cast strength. I mean, who knows if we'll see. I know they have some other Belle Mead offerings out there, but I mean, I think they kind of went away from it. They've got, I think, a sherry. They have a couple others out there that they've done. But I mean, this is something I think they're trying to have as a staple product and have a little bit more consistency. What they say is the sweet spot. Could be some marketing there, but I think that, in the day that we're in right now with bourbons, we've talked about is that cast strength, barrel strength, like that's all the hotness right now. And I think they're kind of going away from that they want to have a more consistent product that they think is, yes, it's higher proof than their sour mash, a different project there, but it's something that they want to have as, hey, this is the way we think it tastes the best from what we've been experimenting with. And this is an easier way for us to do this for you guys to have that experience. They may come out with more cast strength projects, small batches or single barrels or whatever it might be.
They do have others where like they do a Madeira cask finish. They do a sherry cask finish. Yeah. Those are extremely limited.
Right.
And a lot of those you're going to be, upwards $100 over.
Yeah. So I think if you're looking for, I mean, not the rating of it yet, but if you're looking for a true cast strength, this is not your product, but I think this is something that you would probably enjoy because it is a bit higher proof. So there's a little bit of heat, but it doesn't have, for being a high rye, I don't really get a whole lot of that rye spice that sometimes you'll get with that. I think it is sweeter. I think there's a caramel, caramel, however you want to say it. I think there's going to be something that is pretty much for everyone, every bourbon drinker out there. I think you probably would enjoy this a little bit.
Not knowing a ton about bourbon, it's difficult for me to talk about sometimes as far as like what I like and I don't like, but I know that I don't like too much heat. And even this lingering on your palate isn't too hot. Like you get it a little bit in like your nasal cavity if you kind of let it chill there, but it's pleasant.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not something that would deter me from drinking it again.
Good.
So
good.
You did a really good job, and I appreciate you picking it out. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. With that being said, let's get to the final part of part one. So this is something, I don't know if we did this when you were on before. The rating.
I don't believe
so. This is all kind of new.
Okay,
now.
Sweet.
So out of 10. So at the end of part one, we're going to do out of 10 rating. So the whiskey, 10 being the best. So you give a 10 rating on the whiskey. So that's the Belle Mead Reserve, 108.3. The cigar, which is the Macanudo Inspirado Brazilian Shade, out of 10 being the best. And then the pairing together, how would you rate the pairing out of 10 being the best as well? So let's start with Laurel.
Okay. Well, bourbon, I would say 9 out of 10 because of my limited experience with bourbons. I mean, I've had enough to know this is definitely one of my favorites. 9 out of 10. I'm not going to overcomplicate my answer. Cigars. I mean, I love the cigar. I smoke it as much as I can, given the limited quantity. I'd say, 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Pairing wise, I'd say 9 out of 10. I mean, I think it's a great pairing. I do not think that this bourbon overpowers it. I think the cigar has enough weight on its own that it can withstand as Sean said, the viscosity of the bourbon. I think it's a great pairing. Yeah. I love the sweetness. I love that caramel.
The cigar again?
8.
So 9 on the whiskey, 8 on the cigar, 9 on the pairing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sean?
I'd go for the cigar first. I'd go for 8.5. To me, it's kind of refreshing to me to have something that's a little bit lighter, but again, it's got a little bit of kick with the retro, and it just kind of bounces itself out. I like that. I've not really had a cigar like that. Usually, it's like there's more consistency with one or the other.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you enjoy it, especially that it's something different than what you normally smoke.
Yeah, it's to me, it's refreshing, and with the Belle Mead, I would say probably 8.5 on that as well. I just love the flavor of it. I think it'd be a good mixing, like mix it with some, whatever you old fashioned, whatever. It's got the sweetness that could really make it better. And then the pairing, I'll give it a 9 because I think they both complement each other very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that you can bring out more flavors when you combine the two. And it's same with the retro. If the more you smoke the cigar, do the retro and drink, it just brings out so many more flavors to it. So I give that pairing a 9.
Yeah.
Cool.
How about you, Nate?
So on the whiskey, first time I've ever had it, I'm going to give it a 7 for the price. It's enjoyable. It comes across a little bit more pleasant than what I was thinking with being 108 proof. There's not as much heat, but there's a fair amount of spice.
Do you like the heat?
No, not usually.
Is that a personal question or
maybe for part 2?
Really? Yeah, I can tell from the laughter.
All right.
Like, that was really straight.
Phrasing. Do you like the heat? Nate, do you like
here? I'll tell you what.
Packing
that heater.
Do you like the heat?
No, I like it cold.
Perfect.
But no, I mean it's an enjoy. You guys can do your own.
Sorry.
No, I like the bottle. It's even if this was say 40 or 50, I still don't know that I would be gravitating towards it as often as I do some other bottles that are in that price range.
Okay.
So, but it is enjoyable. As far as the cigar, I'm going to give the cigar an 8. Mine between the band and the head is super, super tight.
Okay.
And so I was having a hard time kind of getting that thicker, quantity of smoke out of it. But I do enjoy the flavor. And it's not the first one of these that I've had. And I enjoyed it the first time as well. And it's different. I like Connecticut Shade. And then this just has something different about it, and it's very enjoyable. And I think for the price that the Tinder Box has this on the shelf, and for this size of a cigar, I think it's a pretty good value. So,
and it's a really slow smoker considering the wrapper as well.
Because mine's been a little tighter, I've had to draw on it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm a little bit further down.
Sure.
Than you guys, and
I'm also like the world's slowest smoker. So.
And mine's kind of cracking, but I think that's because I've had to smoke it in maybe the cold, sit in a car while traveling. So
what's that?
The wrapper leaf on this blend is extremely thin.
Microphone. Come on. It's not your first time in the garage. You don't have to sit back down. Go ahead. Yeah, get comfortable.
No, as Mike and I were saying, the wrapper leaf on this blend is actually really, really thin. That's not a bad thing. It still has a great flavor, and I think it smokes really well. Nate, I'm having a similar experience with you with it being a little bit tight at the head. Not so much down the rest of the cigar, but where the band is and above that, it's a little tight. I think this is a really, really great cigar to smoke inside. I think coming in the winter months, I think if you were to take this outside and expose heat to it, because how thin the wrapper, how thin that wrapper leaf is, I think you're going to have problems like this. And mine just happened to do it, on its own without me dropping it or really ashing it hard. It just kind of came up, and as I started to ash it more, it just kind of tore up a little bit. But it still tastes. It's a great tasting cigar. Yeah. The flavor is really unique. It's got a nice creaminess to it, like similar to a lot of the the Ecuadorian Connecticut shade blends that I like. It's got just like a really, really nice creamy flavor to it, but it's got something a little different with that Brazilian tobacco,
which is what makes me enjoy this cigar.
Yeah.
Aside from some of those other Connecticut's that I enjoy as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
What's your rating?
All right.
I didn't give my pairing.
Oh yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Nate.
Sorry, we kind of derailed that.
Pairing, I'm a 7.5 on the pairing. I like
low scores across the board.
I'm known as the Russian judge.
Russian
like
judge.
if I start giving things a 9, that means go out and buy boxes or cases
You're
of it.
like the Simon Cowell of American Idol.
Yes.
Just
not as insulting.
Not as
or
insulting.
rich.
Not All right. Fair point. But 7.5. Like if I go, I know you would comment like if you go whiskey and then cigar, like the cigar pulls add a little bit more of those caramel notes out of the whiskey. Doing it the other way around, like it just kind of fires up my palate and just like a ton of spice and heat. So I don't like it going that way. So
for me, the whiskey, I give it an 8. I think this is the price, like we're talking about, I think, for what the project is, I think it makes sense. I mean, you've got some decent age on the barrels. You've got a higher proof. I think I love the story. I love the marketing. I love the Belle Mead branding that they kind of did an ode to a nod to the history of the brand and of the family. So I like that. They really brought all that back. But again, being an 8, I think it's a good score. It's a lighter whiskey than I thought it was going to be, honestly. I've enjoyed it. I mean, I drank, over a period of weeks, I drank about half the bottle because I actually did enjoy it. It's a decent nightcap without getting too deep and bold. Because again, I didn't know diving into it. I didn't research about it, so I didn't realize it was a higher rye content. So again, I mean, that doesn't mean you're going to get a lot of that bold spice, but it's not what I expected. But it is a different product, and we'll get into that sour mash, obviously a completely different product, but it's something I kind of expected from Belle Mead, and I really enjoy it. So I'd give it an 8 because it is enjoyable. It's a bit more unique. It's a sweeter. The caramel that we talked about, it's got a lot of those characteristics to it that make it a very approachable drink, even at 108.3 proof, which, again, I think we're kind of glancing over the fact that it's 108.3 proof. That's not light. It's also not barrel strength. It's a bold proof that will sneak up on you, but I think it drinks a bit lighter than the proof, which I think is a lot of what they have tried to do. In what I did when I did read up on it, is that they're not necessarily about the barreling, they're about the blending. And that's the project they're trying to do, is that they pick the barrels through MGP, and then their project is to blend it to have a product that you're going to enjoy.
I think it's dangerous making 108 proof at $70 that drinks that smooth.
That's kind of my point.
Yeah, because
that's where I'm getting.
You're gonna drink $70 worth of whiskey real quick.
Right. Yeah. So it goes down easy. The cigar, I'm gonna
have a real bad morning.
Speak for yourself.
Again, unless you're in a Nashville airport, you're drinking at 9 a.m. Belle Mead. Macanudo Inspirado Brazilian Shade. I'm going to give that also an 8. I think this one, and I think we kind of touched on it with the wrapper leaf. I'm going to say this. If Laurel wasn't here, I'd definitely say this. The fact she is here, I'm hesitant to say this.
You're fine.
When I see not the name Macanudo, when I see a limited edition cigar with a very unique blend, with a unique wrapper leaf, I am not expecting it to be an $11 cigar. Okay, so when I see this new project of a Brazilian grown Connecticut seed, shade grown, on a very unique blend of tobacco, I almost expect it to be in that kind of $14, $15 range, even if Macanudo or otherwise, because this is something that it's newer and it's in small amounts. It's not like this. They've messed around with it long enough that they have a regular production like some of the other, like that Nicaraguan Connecticut seed that they're utilizing elsewhere, where that's a staple now. That's like, it's a regular production cigar.
Yeah.
Another reason I would assume that it would be more than $11 is that when you have a project like this with a very unique tobacco wrapper leaf, that you would probably, I'm not saying Macanudo didn't or General didn't, but I would assume that it would be maybe the higher end rollers, just because it's newer, especially the wrapper leaf. It's a newer wrapper leaf, so maybe and I'm not saying they did, but if I was just on the consumer side of it, I'd say, well, maybe if they would have used like their highest end rollers on this project, it would have demanded a higher price tag, which would have scared people away. I'm not saying you guys use like your everyday rollers on this, but it's something that would make it more sense to me why sometimes you might have a little bit of a firmer draw, even though it's going to happen on anything, right? So that could happen on a $20 cigar. There are brands like Davidoff that have a $20, $30 retail price every day of the week, and you can still have a plug issue, right? Or you can have a wrapper leaf that's cracked, or will come out when or crack while you're smoking it. That's I think it all kind of, in my mind, it pieces together. So that's why I'm giving it an 8. Is that this is a great blend of tobacco. The one I'm smoking here, and it looks like Laurel too. It's smoking beautifully. I've got a great draw. I've got no cracks, but to hear around the garage you're having it, it could be the change in weather, the humidity. You guys are traveling. Laurel, you and Mike are traveling with these cigars as well. That's never ideal for a cigar. Moving it around, obviously in a car, different temperatures in a car, then out of a car, and in shops and all that stuff. So that's why I give it an 8, because I love the uniqueness of this blend and the project, and I'm excited to see. That's what I've been excited to see. Just as a side note, what Macanudo has done with you coming on board, Laurel, and with the Inspirato line and the kind of these projects that you guys are doing to, again, pay tribute to your core lines that sell like crazy. But hey, this is also a Macanudo.
Yeah.
And it is this everyday cigar for people at a very high quality.
May I play devil's advocate / ask you a question? Oh, it's not bad. I'm not going to shit on you. I just have, our issue with the limited is with the price. I think there's a certain expectation if you're paying $14 to $15 for a limited cigar, people expect it to be just a powerhouse. So I think,
So you think the body?
I think that people, in my experience, have a harder time paying $15 for a cigar that they perceive to be of maybe lesser value because it doesn't have that just crazy strength to it.
There are people out there, and I think that goes along with, we get this conversation going a lot with the whiskeys as well, is that where the industry is at, and I think the not length of time of the industries themselves necessarily, but the booms. I'm of the opinion that the cigar boom happened earlier than the bourbon boom, obviously.
Yeah.
And right now, you're seeing a little bit of that resurgence of the cigar boom, but the bourbon boom was already ahead of it with that strength. I mean, I know that for a while there in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, and into the 2010s, you saw more Ligero going into. You saw this strength just bump it up. You didn't see that in the late 90s as much. Like an Opus X was like, oh my God, this thing is strong as shit. And now it's medium.
Middle of the road.
Middle of the road as far as strength, right? Strength-wise, kind of middle of the road. So I think to your point, I agree. There are a lot of smokers out there that they're not going to buy a mild limited edition. Yeah. But there is a part of the industry in the cigar world that, again, I mentioned Davidoff. I mentioned, we mentioned like Macanudo. We mentioned Cohiba. Like we had Sean on with the Cohiba Connecticut. That's an everyday cigar for that line, coming in at a $20+ price point. I think the Macanudo name may hold it back from justifying a milder cigar because for a boutique cigar smoker, they're probably not going to buy this. There's not, because it says Macanudo on it. For a Macanudo cigar smoker, they would try it at $11. And I've had customers that have really liked it. Hey, we also have this new Macanudo. It's a limited run. Yeah. It's a unique blend, Brazilian, yada, yada, yada. And it's in the ballpark of your everyday. Sure. SKUs.
I mean, it's not that much different than like a cafe.
Right.
Right. You know,
so it's approachable price wise. Yeah. If it was $15, they might be like, just give me the regular one. I don't spend
alienate that customer.
I think this would be kind of like a step up for that person that likes, like they're a regular cafe smoker.
Yeah.
Like they love the cafe. Like this, because of the price point and this still being that mild to medium strength, like this is kind of that next step for that cafe lover.
But to that point, when we're talking about like ones like a Monte Cristo White series, like this is something that I would say, hey, not to try to save them $3 or whatever, but it's like, hey, you like that? We actually have this new Macanudo that has I think a little bit more characteristics that are more, I guess, in your face on the palate, but without being overpowering than the cafe series. Yeah. So I think you're going to get that. So Ryan, what do you want to say? And then I'm going to give my pairing.
So this is a more of a question for Laurel. So you
got to hold the mic up to your face.
So this is a question for Laurel.
No.
No. Okay. Perfect.
Thank you.
To bring more clarity about the price point to this blend, as a lot of us know in the industry, usually true Connecticut shade tobacco is a little bit more expensive, right? Obviously, it's grown here in the U.S. You pay U.S. employees.
Yeah, and the weather here is pretty spotty, so we don't know if we're going to have a great growing season.
Yeah, correct. And then you got Ecuadorian Connecticut shade.
Yes.
Usually a little bit less. Now,
yes.
There are some very high-end Ecuadorian Connecticut shade blends. Where does this new hybrid Brazilian shade-grown tobacco, where does that fall in that realm between the two? And what makes it different? As far as like the way it's grown and the fact that it's a hybrid, and this is still kind of like it's still a new type of tobacco that they're growing. I mean, is it more expensive? Is it less expensive? I mean, what can you?
All right, I'm going to try to answer all of the components of this question. So yes, to your point, Ecuadorian Connecticut tends to be a little bit less expensive because we know we're going to get a certain amount of yield because the weather is very consistent, right? When we start messing with US grown tobacco, we don't know if it's going to be a cold year, a warm year, a dry year, a wet year. Like it's just, there's so many variants. So that drives the price up a little bit more. Also that it is grown domestically, right? Whereas the Connecticut shade from Ecuador, it's a little bit more, I don't want to say consistent, but again, we kind of know what to expect. So when we kind of get into the Brazilian shade, which obviously we're smoking, you have to take into consideration the time that it takes for our guys in the factory to, get to achieve the seed that we are looking for to be grown. And then we also have to take into consideration that it's not something, we're a pretty vertically integrated company, right? We have our own fields, we have our own, production and whatnot, but we also source tobacco from elsewhere. So in Brazil, we do not have, it is not our company that owns it. We are outsourcing from private farmers, from private families. So with that, there's inherently a little bit more cost to it. So it's going to fall closer to the, like the cafe series, like the true Connecticut shade. Yeah. Closer in that realm more so than like the Ecuadorian Connecticut realm. Is that helpful? Yeah. Okay.
Does that answer any?
Yeah.
Does that answer your 8-part question?
Yeah, I do.
Perfect.
I did have multiple parts to that question.
So it's like I want to keep tracking.
It's a good question. I mean,
Yeah,
and I mean that's not to say that again. Like that's not to say just because Ecuadorian Connecticut shade tobacco is a little bit less expensive, it's not as good. Like most of the Connecticut shade blends that I smoke will have the Ecuadorian Connecticut shade.
Between a true Connecticut, which is the Connecticut shade grown here,
right,
as opposed to Ecuadorian Connecticut, I tend to lean towards Ecuadorian Connecticut because
Me too.
especially in the growing region, it's very volcanic. So you get those really like the nutrient dense soil that translates to the tobacco, like the Inspirato white in particular. Mm-hmm. You get the creaminess, the spice. It's a really dynamic, complex wrapper that you don't necessarily get here. So the price point is great for the consumer, but just flavor wise, I tend to prefer that.
Yeah. And that's to my, to kind of round it off. I think for $11, I think that's a really good value for this new hybrid strain.
Yeah.
Seeing as though that it's going to be closer to the true Connecticut shade price, especially with it for, being a limited production cigar too, on top of everything.
Yeah.
I think it's a great value.
Yeah. Well, and with the Connecticut shade here, I mean, these aren't our factories either. Everything being grown in Connecticut, they're all private farmers.
Yep.
So, we've been working with them for so long. We get first right of refusal and we have certain people that we work with. So that kind of puts it in line with those guys as well, simply because it's not something that we are able to, do ourselves.
How much was the palladium that you guys talked about earlier?
The palladium was about $10.
Okay, so this would be
kind of in line with that. The Heritage Nuevo was the most expensive. So actually, kind of to your point, the Heritage Nuevo was a $14 to $15 cigar.
Yep.
And
so this coming in like that $11 to $12 price point, depending on the size, like that's one of the more
one size, right?
You did two sizes
for this.
2 sizes.
Churchill Toro.
Oh yeah, we have the Toro here.
Yeah. So this is like the second most expensive limited edition from Macanudo.
Yeah. So if we're looking in recent years, it would be Palladium would be the least expensive. This would be in the middle, and then Heritage Nuevo would be at the top as far as price point.
So $11 to $12, and it's a limited edition, and still that's just like the second most expensive limited edition. Like
that's kind of what I was getting at. My rating's a 9.
All right.
for the pairing.
I support your rating.
No, that was I was just rounding out my third one. Kind of went on a tangent again. A show of
It was a
tangents.
good
There was a lot of
tangent,
Great
though.
question.
It was
There
a
was a
lot of
relevant
information.
tangent. A relevant tangent, not like chips and milk duds.
I think that's relevant. I think it's very relevant, just like the pronunciation of words.
Yes.
Pronunciation of words. All right. Mike, you happy you came? Cool. Cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Thank you to our sponsors. And we will go into actually.
Cheers.
Cheers. I want to say Tinder Box at Easton, you want to kind of show off here the new Macanudo Inspirado sampler. A little
Yes. Vanna White
shameless
action.
plug here. But this is obviously nationwide, right? This is a new sampler that you guys have brought out.
Yes.
Beautiful packaging for the holidays. Includes a lighter. But yeah, Tinder Box at Easton, who is one of our sponsors, they do have this coming.
All Toros, one of each size.
Be here next week for the holidays.
Yep. And there's a
Blend.
quick little blend breakdown.
That's actually
so,
nice. You
so
don't see
great
that on a
for-
lot of samplers.
Great for gifts. So if you're coming in, you're buying for somebody, and you don't really know how to like translate that information to them, it's all in the box. So good little holiday pack.
Yeah, we see a lot of customers
what,
now.
what blends are in it? Real quick. How many
So, yeah.
cigars? What?
All right.
5 cigars?
So yes, 5 cigars, one from each of our Inspirato core line. And personally, I love that it's in the order of the strength.
That is nice.
So, oh, sorry.
thought.
Thank you. It's in order of the strength. So it makes it a little bit easier. So we have the Inspirato white, orange, black, green, and red. So it's a Toro from each of our full run blends.
And you got a handy dandy lighter.
For a low, low price at Tinder Box Easton.
What is this? It's cool. Yeah. It's somewhere between $20 and $100.
Yeah.
So you check it out.
It costs money.
Easy to wrap up, actually.
And it comes
Honestly,
with a
All
lighter.
joking aside, it actually is a beautiful presentation. It's a larger box than what is needed for a 5-pack, in my opinion. But what I liked when you flipped it around was the explanation of the blends. Because
I agree.
again, on the retail side, and you guys out there that are getting into cigars, this is not necessarily just great for a gift. I think this is something that when someone comes in, hey, I'm just getting into it, I don't know really what I like to smoke.
It lets you try a little bit of everything.
That's one of my favorite techniques on the retail side or trying to help someone get into cigars. Too often they're gonna, and it kind of takes away from some of your core lines there in Macanudo, like the Hyde Park. Hyde Park Cafe is a real easy one. Oh, you're new to it. Here's a real nice, mild, everyday, like you're gonna enjoy it, all that stuff. But if all you do is smoke mild cigars for the first year or two you're smoking, you're limiting yourself because you don't know. So that's why I like that, is that this is a mild to full-bodied sampler, comes with a lighter, great for a new cigar smoker because a lot of times that's a great gift also. And then also you have the explanations of and the breakdowns of
And
the
the lighter.
blends. And the lighter.
So now, kind of in that realm, do you, as far as sort of like sampler packs or variety packs go, do you prefer something that kind of gives you a full range of flavor and body, or do you think it would be more advantageous to have something that's like all mellower, all more medium, all more full bodied?
So I think for a newer or more novice smoker, I think a mild to full body, or at least like a range, right?
Sure.
It doesn't have to be necessarily like the most mild out there to a
Doesn't have to
just
be a
ass
1
kicker,
and a
right?
10.
Right. I like the range because again, it helps you develop what you might like. And you might smoke a mild cigar thinking you're new and you're like, oh, this is going to be my favorite one because I'm intimidated by the fuller bodied stuff, and you don't like it, or vice versa. You don't think you're going to like a full bodied one, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is my favorite one. And it can come back into a retail, like a brick and mortar, or do your own research. You can actually find out what you like. And with all the information you're giving on that one, I like that. As you get into it, you know what you like. And say I don't necessarily like milder cigars. If I'm buying a 4-pack or a 5-pack, I'm going to gravitate towards a sampler pack that's got more medium to full-bodied cigars, because I know that I'm not necessarily going to like the mild one as much unless I smoke it in the morning, or I'm in that mood, or I have like a coffee or something like that. That way I can do this, and it would have to be a good deal. Like there are some samplers out there that are just like buy two, get two, and one of them's a mild. I'm like, I'll smoke it or I'll give it to someone. You know what I mean? Like, so like I like this for more novice
Almost like our
smokers.
Excalibur packs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Also, I do want to thank Altadis USA. I know that's not you guys, but behind
okay.
us, they do sponsor the show. Easy, Mike.
Here, we'll just go like that.
You can't block the sponsor. Yeah. Former, never mind. But yeah, Altadis USA, Monte Cristo, Romeo Julieta, H. Upman, and countless others. But thank you to Josh Bentley and the people at Altadis USA for another year of sponsorship. He's going to be on the first Wednesday of December again, and we're going to be featuring hopefully the Romeo Julieta Eternal, which is a Plasencia blend. So we're hoping to do that if those are available by then. BS Cigar Company as well, the Gold and Silver are available. And you guys out there, patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. That's a way to do a monthly thing. I do want to put up the banner here. This is something that's been well received already. So you can go to buyjack.com, which is byjack.com/Bourbon and BS, and you can buy the shirts that we have for the podcast. So print it on the front, pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together. We've got the gray and black that Nate has on. We have a black and gray. We have a blue and black. We have a red and black. And for a limited time, I think I'm going to extend it to the first full week of November. But right now, those are $25 online. You can get them, pick your size, your color. They'll ship it directly to you. So we're happy to team up with buyjack.com. But we also have a charity pink Bourbon and BS podcast shirt. It says the same stuff. It's pink with the black writing. It's $30, and $10 from every shirt will go to the National Breast Cancer Foundation. So we're going to do that through the end of this month, but I'm going to extend it the first full week, and hopefully we'll do some more charities, or if we have some success, we'll make it just readily available for you guys to do that. And then every month I'll be donating, or the podcast will be donating $10 from every shirt for that. So I know we've sold a handful of those. So like, I know Sean's been listening. Anyone that's ordered those, please share that to me or the podcast or to the community page on Facebook so that we can get some of that, that good design. Press out there.
Yeah.
It's
great.
Turned out great. But yeah, I love doing that, and I love the fact that we've grown this to a point that even though it may be some small donations at first, but hopefully we'll grow it to be able to donate to more charities through the community, and I think it's great. So you guys all look great in pink, so don't hesitate on buying that one. With that, cheers again.
Cheers.
I don't know if we're gonna do this, but cheers.
Why not?
We got a little bit left.
There you go.
And part 2 is going to be growth or change. Talking about Laurel's story here a little bit, and talk about your guys' life. So thank you very much. If you're listening on the audio, click to part 2, share it, like it, review it, all that stuff, subscribe. And if you're listening to the live right now on Facebook or YouTube, stay tuned while we do an intermission, and you can just listen to some side comments. I do have a question for the intermission as well.
Sure.
Cheers, guys. Scene. We're still live.
But there's no audio.
No, they're listening to us. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, they're listening. But so, like, if you're listening to you listen to the podcast like on like iTunes or something like that, it's already ended.
Oh, okay.
That's the mass amount of editing we're doing. What are you doing?
Awesome.
What's going on here?
Hey, stop blocking my heat. What are you doing?
All right. So I had a question for the intermission.
Yes.
Let's
see. Is
this
a question for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you know this. So Ray Cheshire from Vietnam says, "Is the buying of tobacco like the buying of fabric in the garment trade? Do you have to place seasons in advance based on your projected sales?" Or I'll say projects.
So, I mean, we'll know what we are looking to get. So, yeah, I mean, we can't just go there. I'm using like arbitrary months at this point. We can't go there in March and say we need a bunch of tobacco by, May. So we'll look at projects and, source the farms, source the people who can do it and say like, okay, are we going to be able to get this much tobacco? What are you going to have for us this year? What are you going to have for us next year? So yes, there's definitely some forethought that goes into it, having to give projections on how much we're going to need. So I don't know how close. I mean, I know nothing about like the fashion industry and fabric industry, but I mean, it's definitely, there's similarities in that respect.
Yeah, I think from what I know, and I love that we had Ricky on last week, and he gave this example when he was in the garage. We brought it up last week. When he was coming out with it, he threw out the figure that if he wants to come out with a regular production blend, new project, he has to, or like the company has to know that they have enough tobacco initially to produce at least about 900,000 cigars.
Yeah.
And that's just so that you can get that initial out there. If it takes off, hopefully, obviously, they have a projected that they will have more of the tobacco, but at the very least you have successful couple years with that. So it's not just something that you say, it's a new core product.
And you're only releasing 2,000 boxes
and you're on back order right away.
Yeah, exactly.
This time, like this, in this current situation we're in, you have back orders just like every other industry right now.
Yeah.
But as far as the planning process, that's something that I learned from Rick Rodriguez, is that is something, even if he loves a blend and he thinks that this is going to be a hit, and it's going to hit what they're trying to do, they may have to tweak the project a little bit,
based
or
on
make
what
it
we have
limited,
available.
like we have here in our the Inspirato Brazilian Shade. It'll become a limited project or a small batch, or it'll just you say, we don't have that binder leaf, we don't have that filler combination. We have to tweak it a little bit, and then you kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit.
And then on the other, on the other side of it, we have the potential to say, oh, we either have this tobacco here, or we can source this tobacco from, X, Y, or Z source. And what project can we use it for? Or we know this is really quality tobacco. We know it's coming from a place that's super desirable that we want to use. What project can we attach it to? So it kind of goes both ways.
Yep.
It's we want something, we reach out, or it's, hey, we have this, what can we do with it?
Right.
Would you rather create a core line that's going to be regular production every single year, or would you rather have those once a year limited releases that are kind of just new and get kind of a burst in smokers and sales and stuff like that each year?
It's a difficult question because I love the idea of limited release cigars and being able to use like different fun tobacco that's maybe a one-off, whether it be from a place that doesn't have a lot of yield or a hybrid seed or whatever it may be, and be able just to do these sort of fun, unique projects. But then you also, there's definitely value in having that core line. There's nothing worse than, falling in love with something that's limited and never being able to have it again. So, I think the balance is important. But as far as the industry goes, I think it would behoove us to have more of those core lines with like the sort of just like little peppered in fun limited projects.
We can only get so big with just limited runs, right? That's same thing with the bourbon side. If all you did was like the C-Rhine, the small batches or the single barrels or whatever.
Yeah. And if you have
that's all you're doing, like, I'm sorry, you're going to have another job. Like that's not going to keep the lights on.
If you have something core line or full production that is well received, you're getting that return, right? You have people coming back to it. 2020 might have an amazing release, and then 2021 re-release something, and people are like, eh. So
I've seen that from the retail side as well. Is that it's one of those things that there's some brands out there that they'll do a once a year release.
Yeah.
It's a series, but it's a different blend every time.
Yeah, like what Las Calaveras, right? Every year they have a different.
He wasn't going to drop names.
Sorry.
So if you had a cigar named Las Calaveras, no, but yeah, so that actually was the one I was talking about, and they have. I love what Crowned Heads do.
Yeah.
Also based out of
Nashville, and Miguel's great.
Miguel's great.
So
the whole I love what they're doing, John Huber
awesome.
And all them. But I do love the fact, but that was one of those things is that you can have hit or miss depending on where it's at, right? Or the blend. You go from one year to the other. Well, I really liked last year's.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, we have this year's, and they're like, yeah, I smoked one. I didn't like as well as I did last year's.
And then
like,
they have
but it's a different blend. They say it's different blend. Yeah, I just wish we had last year's. And you're like, cool.
So there's that.
Cool.
Even though objectively it could be a great blend, if you're comparison is the thief of joy, right? So if you're constantly comparing it to maybe something else that you've smoked, what was the one that ended up being a full run? That it's the
2014,
La Imperiosa, yes, that one, because that whatever year that was from Las Calaveras was, a fantastic cigar. And it became a full production cigar.
Well, you got the consumer side of it. We experienced this, and we'll get into part 2 here. Do you need to take a break?
I might take a bathroom break.
All right. But we ran
Mike? I know we're already at my limit today.
You got enough fingers for that?
I'm at 6. Okay.
But yeah, that was one of those things that we had. That Las Calaveras was a great example. Actually, he said it was that we had people coming in for whatever year it was, a couple years back. They're like, yeah, you have the new Las Calaveras. It's like, no, actually, we have last year's though. And they're like, oh yeah, that was okay, but you have this year's. And it was like, no, but we still have last year's. That's why we don't have this year's. Like.
Yeah.
From a business side of it, it's fun for the consumer, but if it dwindles out or if you start comparing year to year, especially with the same name, you can change the color of the band. You can be full disclosure, a different blend. But guys, like if you're a big fan, like buy it up so they keep doing it.
Now my question to you is taking for example the 2014 Las Calaveras. When it was made into the La Imperiosa, do you think people were not did it have as much traction as the limited release, or did people like the concept of the limited release and not necessarily buy it in the same capacity as they did the 2014 limited?
To the cigar geeks out there that really liked that blend and they were excited about it coming back out, I think they were excited at first, but I think the majority of buyers and I think the success of a brand like that, like with La Imperiosa within a brand, I think that had staying power because it's now the La Imperiosa.
Yeah.
And if you tell a cigar smoker that wasn't into crown heads, that wasn't smoking cigars in 2014, they're like, oh yeah, this was actually Las Calaveras. Like, what's that?
Yeah.
I really like La Imperiosa.
Yeah.
So that's one of my questions, again, was with this project is this testing the waters? And I think Las Calaveras, some years for John Huber and his camp is, that is some way that a company, hey, we have the ability, we know we have enough tobacco. Let's do that as the limited run this year, see what the reception is.
Yeah.
And if it's strong enough, then we can maybe introduce this as a new brand, but you don't want to surprise the followers of the brand.
Yeah.
You can actually at least have a springboard into the launch.
Sure.
Hey guys, you really like the 2014 Las Calaveras. This is that blend under the new name La Imperiosa. It's going to be a part of our portfolio from here on out. Those people are going to go out and smoke it. Up to them if they're going to say, oh, it's got a different colored band on it. I don't, it's not the same.
I think that kind of touches on Ray's follow-up question to what we're talking about. If you're making a cigar that's going to be a full-time production cigar, but sales don't take off with it, do you ever stop that? Do you stop making that cigar and use that tobacco for something else?
So if we were to release something limited with the intention of it becoming...
Like if you were going to make a cigar that was going to be...
Hang on. Let me put it up there. It's the last one up there. Yeah, so if you buy into a certain tobacco, so he's going back to that, the fabric type thing, because that's his industry that he was involved with before he's retired, and I think I always joke he's watching like the V right now in Vietnam. If you buy into a certain tobacco and then the cigar doesn't sell, how easy is it to pull it, stop production, and switch it up, or do you simply have to live through it till the end?
So, I mean, kind of going back to your conversation with Rick, right? I mean, if we're releasing a blend and we have to have X amount of units, we're typically making all of those units before starting to ship. So even if the blend is a flop, those are all production cigars that we now need to sell through. We won't necessarily source that tobacco and make that same blend, but once we have the project and we have the amount of units that we need to release, you can't really pull out of that because everything is being made prior to, or at least the majority of it is being made prior to the release. So we have enough to be able to, you guys order it, we want to obviously supply you.
Yeah.
That's not something necessarily then, oh, okay, well, this wasn't maybe super well received, or we want to kind of go in a different direction. We won't order or source the tobacco for that project for the future. If that answers that question.
Yeah. So let me answer this, Ray, and I don't want to misrepresent what you did, but he was with a very large company, and a lot of it I think was internal sales, in a sense. So if you're familiar with, and that's not who he ended up with, but he was with them for a long time as L Brands, right? So so a lot of that stuff I think is more like internal customers, like you're pushing it out to your stores direct to consumers. With this, I think one thing that we kind of glanced over here and didn't really talk about is, especially the bigger companies, what'll happen is that when, before it launches at, say, a trade show or a release, there's going to be the pre-packs. So there's something where, yes, you start the production, you have the tobacco, you have all that stuff, you're working on that, but it's every step of the way. I think that it's going to be, before it gets to the consumer, So Mike, who was on the mic before, Mike Sauerball, who's with General Cigars, so he's with Laurel here this week. So that's one of the things that when he comes into the retail, the brick and mortars, and then also from the company going to the online retailers as well, is that they're pushing this product so that you have the idea. You guys have already come full circle with it.
Yes,
right?
we already have everything.
It's not necessarily when he says, so full production is complete prior to shipping. Yes, but you have a certain amount for the first phase. you try to push it out before you publicize it, or you are doing it like simultaneously.
But everything's already being
made.
But
you could shut it down if like the reps come back and be like, yeah, I've sold this, and they look at the numbers. I mean, again, that goes back to the office, right? And they're like, yeah, it's not the numbers we thought. So it's a constant. I think it's not necessarily calling audibles, and I'm not in that part of the industry, but it makes sense business wide. It's like, we're going to go this route. And then it's like, if it starts falling short, you're like, well, we haven't rolled 3 million cigars necessarily. We've rolled 1 million cigars. And all right, so it's looking like we need to start slowing this project down. And what can we do? Because you already have the tobacco. Yeah.
Well, now here's a good example.
Constant production of the cigars to that point. They're constantly being rolling. It's constantly doing that. It's not like we have all these cigars rolled for the next 3 years of product.
So the cigar that we are, you were smoking, right? The Brazilian Shade. We touched on it earlier. The release was actually delayed because we had basically samples made up for, reps and, retailers and everything, but we weren't super thrilled with the wrapper. It just wasn't what we were looking for. So we actually kind of we held it back, went back to the drawing board and said, okay, we need to get, wrapper that is going to work for this particular cigar. So we actually had already started production as far as making samples and starting to give them to people before we said, hold on, let's pull this back a little bit and make sure we get exactly what we want. So there is room to tweak it, but you're still kind of already in it.
All right. So Sean, we're still in the intermission right now. I know. I think this is actually part of the growth or change type of conversation. So hold on that thought. Do you need to?
Oh, sorry. Do you want me to go right now? Yeah, sure. I'll run.
I don't want you to. I feel like we should get into part 2 and we can actually carry this conversation into it. Yeah. Reserve Real? The original?
They came out with just 3. They didn't have the bellicoso, the long tail, all the sizes. The reason they came up with 3, they figured if those 3 work, then they should broaden it.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing that. And so this is something that I do want to go into the conversation a little bit here because I think this is something like growth and change, like from this industry. I think this is definitely something you can do it. But so Ray did actually comment in his industry with the fabrics, right? And fashion, apparel. He said in our industry, there's a lot of trial prior to major purchases. We call it the quote chase is what their term is in that industry. If it does well, then we would proceed with larger volumes.
They did that back when I started back in the day.
Yeah.
We did a lot with Bonnie White, 3-pack. St. Louis Ray when they did it, 3-pack.
Thank you, guys. Good seeing you again.
And it was designed to see if that actual blend will work. They didn't come out with
6 sizes. Yeah,
6 sizes. We had 3.
So
and when it was called Reserve Rail was one of the biggest hits ever. And they're like, Christ, we need to have a bellicoso. We need to have a long down
it's called a line extension, right? So I mean that is something that this is at the level of Altadis, one of our sponsors, right? A level of General with you guys with Macanito, right? I mean, this is something that it's on a bigger scale, kind of like what Ray was dealing with L Brands, some of these major, companies. They have it on a larger scale. They have more means to, like, if something fails, you never want it to fail. But if you want to, there are different techniques. I can relate on a very, very small scale to everyone out there in the cigar industry. When Brian and I started messing around with the project, the BS cigar company, we had 1 size, 1 blend. Now, this was not a core business. This is like Brian's business is a retail store. So we're like, hey, let's do this. Well, let's work on the project in the background. And it's all about, it's about how much you're putting out there as a prior investment of saying, all right, so if you come out with, and there are people in the cigar industry that you've never heard of them before. And then all of a sudden they show up at trade show, like, we got 6 blends and we got 6 sizes in each. And we're like, holy shit, how much money did you spend on this? Like you're playing a terrible money line right now. Like you know what I mean? Like that's it. Like you're gambling. You're putting everything out there. If it succeeds, hopefully you'll see it come back. But you have the opportunity to dip your toe in it.
Some of the smaller companies, like where he started to work at, when I first met Lito at a trade show in Orlando the first year, they had like 5 sizes, 1 line, and I'm like, and the guy I went with goes, when you're just starting out, you don't start out with 12 shades,
Yeah.
thousands of boxes. And I go, because they weren't really sure
Right.
this is going to go.
So more recently in the cigar industry, and I love the guy to death, right, is Omar DeFrias with Fratello, right? So he came out with several years back. We came out with, I think, the one line, and it was several sizes. And it was like, his story is great. And I'd love to have Omar on here. But he did that. I like that. He had a career going, and then he decided to basically completely unrelated. He's now tried to tie it in with the NASA and all that stuff. But I love the fact that he basically, when I talked to him, and I'm not going to say any numbers, but I talked to him kind of like privately, it was one of those things. I'm like, bro, like, how much did you? And he didn't tell me the actual number. He's like, it was a lot of my investment money. Like, it was a lot of my not retirement, but it's like a lot of, like, he did well for himself for like the 12 or whatever years he was in that NASA, like doing the, like, so he didn't go like 6 lines and all that stuff, but he went all in. He's like, I got a blend. I'm happy with it. I got this many sizes, and I'm now traveling the country by myself. That's all in. But I like where you guys are at, like the bigger size. Once you get to a certain level, you can actually say, all right, we got this project, we have this tobacco. That's the other aspect of it is, and again,
Purchasers of tobacco in general nowadays.
Yeah.
They buy the most tobacco.
Yeah.
They get the first shot.
Well,
When you go to the warehouses, I mean, my first time in, the humidor just was already pre-rolled cigars was the size of the gymnasium.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is all this? They go, this is just stuff they've made, blends. It's aging. And I go,
just get him a lapel mic.
But they don't necessarily have a project assigned to it.
Project name.
Yeah.
And back in the day, Benji Mendez worked for Altadis.
Benji Mendez, yeah.
And Benji's like, all these are stuff that we've made and tried. We don't even have a name. We just have the stuff rolled. And I went,
I'd love to smoke some of the stuff in that room.
Right.
Believe me, I went in the back room and got some stuff that was aged for 20 years. And I go, it's 20 years.
Yeah.
The date it was made on it and the roller. And I'm like, who keeps track of all this? And he goes, they know.
Yeah.
This is what, when you wonder why your cigar is expensive, time equals money, right? When you have to babysit a cigar for 20 years.
There's an R&D level to it, right? So you go back all the way to the farming. I am not necessarily to the level you guys are at, but November 17th, we've got Hector Alfonso from Espinosa Cigars going to be on. He's going to be in the garage. I don't know if you guys know Hector or not, but he's the master blender for Espinosa Cigars, and he's the one that actually we worked with to blend the BS Silver.
Oh, cool.
So part of that process, I think that for those listening that are fascinated with this part, on a small to medium size, and Eric's getting bigger.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually working with General Cigars. I mean, like Warzone was a General product, right? But I think Hector could talk a little bit more detail on the blending process and what they're doing, because I know one of the things I learned from meeting them and blending the BS Silver is that you hear when you don't own all the tobacco like you guys do, you're buying tobacco. And you go into one of these and you don't have the checkbook of Altadis or General. Mm-hmm. You walk in there and you have the connections. You're in the room. You're like, I want that wrapper leaf. You buy that wrapper leaf in that quantity, you're going to need to take this and this as well. You're like, well, I don't want that. And you're like, do you want that wrapper leaf? Because I mean, that's kind of part of the industry. You know what I mean? And from what I understand, he's like, I got to do something with this other tobacco over here. So we'll see what we can do with that. And it's just, it's always moving parts.
Yeah.
It really is.
This stuff is, like I said, I was astonished the first time I went to one of our place in Raw Vermont, and I was like, I never knew how many cigars they actually had pre-rolled, that they didn't have a band or anything.
Yeah.
It was shocking because I was like, that's a lot of cigars. And they're rolling every day.
It's a lot of tobacco.
I go, wow. And then you just kind of think about the cost. I'm thinking,
just sitting there, cash.
A lot of money just hanging out.
That's it.
$1 a piece, they got $20 million. Like,
oh, yeah.
It's a lot of money.
And then you hear those projects, I'm not gonna say it, but you hear those projects of like smaller ones that are like, yeah, we these
cigars, I go,
we got this limited run. This is like a boutique brand or whatever. I got this limited run. It was coming, like, been sitting in a factory or through in a warehouse, and they've been aging for like 5 years. And you're like, so you just bought someone's cigars that they just were like, yeah, you can have this stuff. I mean, for this price. And they're like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And let's slap a marketing band on it. And, yeah.
The warehouse is so big. And like I said, from my standpoint, when I was there, I was like, I went home and I was just like thinking, when the guy told me the rough number, what they had in inventory, I was like, even at $1 a stick,
yeah,
you're spending a lot of money for years before it ever comes out. And then Benji told me one time, he said some of this stuff, they didn't think it'd be ready for 5, 6, 7 years.
It's always aging.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
But,
It's like whiskey.
We're cutting you off.
Well, we can talk more about this. All right. This is episode 192.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. I got you.
Part 2.
Part 2. Come on, man. What?
When a company like you buys your BS stuff, how many cigars you buy at a time?
So the question was, and it was like with a project like BS, where we are at in the industry, again, very small, and it's just like a side project. It's all synergy with our shop and with this and everything else. Our typical order, and it's grown now, but you had to basically, when we first started with Casa Fernandez at the time, Aganorsa Leaf, you had to just buy basically, I think it was like 2,000 cigars. So you say nothing, but that's not a lot at a big level, but everyone thinks like, oh, I'm going to start a cigar brand. I'm going to make a lot of money. You're like, well, your first investment, if you go big, it's this. If you go small, it's this. But you have to actually get it in someone's hands. So you have to have someone to buy it from you. So that was the difference, is that as a retail store, you already have a place to sell it. So that's already a step that is beyond it. Now, with the BS Gold being made at Plasencia, to get regular production in the current state that we're in, you're looking at 8,000 to 10,000 cigars at a time at an order. The lead time used to be 10 to 12 weeks, and now like that 12 weeks turned into 18 to 20. And so now that's why. So the last order we placed for the gold that's in production right now is, and again, it's growing a little bit. So the thing is, you order 8,000 to 10,000 cigars in different sizes, 3 different sizes. Well, we'll take delivery on this. They're going to warehouse this. Right. So now it's like, all right, so now you have that backlog, kind of like the bigger boys are starting to get, so like, yeah, then the age of a rolled cigar will sit there, but you have more cash flow out there. So it's again, it's growth and change. That's kind of what we can talk about. Yeah.
Perfect segue.
Need silence so I can actually cut this on the audio. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast. This is episode 192, part 2, Beyond the BS. And we still have Laurel Tilley from Macanudo Cigars. Look like you're getting more comfortable.
Still stuck with me.
Sitting back in the chair a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I don't feel like I need to be just in the microphone the whole time.
For them to hear you, you'd have to be.
Okay, well, then I will keep leaning forward.
Get that core workout.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Perfect. So we smoked the Macanudo Inspirado Brazilian Shade, which is a limited production cigar. They are sold out from their side. I know Tinder Box at Easton, one of our sponsors, has some still available, and they are out in the wild at other brick and mortars, not only in the Midwest, but nationwide. So check that out. Listen to part 1. Click back if you're listening to the audio to part 1 to hear what we had to say about it. Learn about the project. Learn about the unique wrapper leaf, especially the hybrid leaf that's on there. Very unique project that Laurel has been involved in. And again, they sold out, so they did their part. And now it's up to you guys to hopefully experience it as well and enjoy it. We drank the Belle Mead. That's the reserve. They basically honed it in on a 108.3 proof instead of the small cast strength. Mm-hmm. And this is something that we also reviewed in part 1. So, thank you to Ryan Newman, who's been on the show before, for actually gifting that bottle to me on the podcast.
And that bottle was not full when we started.
It's gone. It was brand new.
It was below.
Yeah, it was.
No, it's full. It's actually our second bottle.
And we are now in part 2, drinking another Belle Mead product. This is kind of their core product. This is a sour mash whiskey straight bourbon. This is also, this is 45.2, so 90.4 proof. Mm-hmm. Again, not anything to shy away from.
I'm not driving.
$40 price point as opposed to $70 price point.
Yeah, I have to try this one, right?
You have to.
I must. It's
part
of the
rules
show.
On the show, but
interesting. Even the the classic, as they used to call it, it's still a 6 to 8 year product, coming in at $40 as opposed to $70 for this.
Still
70.
Still
sourced.
Yeah, MGP.
But this one, they actually tell you it is a 30% rye content.
So they give a little bit more details on this one here.
So that's a very high rye in the bourbon world.
Check out part 1 for that. We talked a little bit about Belle Mead, the history of it. And I got to be honest, for those that are listening for the first time to part 2, or if you listen to part 1, we sometimes dive more into the whiskey side, especially if we have someone from that company or that brought the bottle. I've checked it out. Belle Mead is well represented in the whiskey review YouTube industry. So if you guys want the nitty gritty of it, you can do your own research or check out other podcasts or YouTube videos. But you know what I like about what we do in part one, especially when we have someone like Laurel on, we change the focus a little bit. So we highlight a little bit on the whiskey. We give our opinions of it. We give a little bit of the facts on it. But having Laurel on, we dove more into the cigar side of it. So every week's a little bit different.
That's great because I can talk about cigars, but I can't talk about whiskey.
No, but you gave your opinion of it, and I love that. Real quick, so we mentioned Tinder Box at Easton. I also want to mention Altadis USA and also Be a Cigar Company, our sponsors. Check out their great products. And just to highlight the patreon.com/bourbonandbs podcast. You guys have been amazing. We didn't do the raffles, so we're going to have to do that off the air. We're going to do that on the
what are we raffling?
We're raffling off a couple things, but we'll do this. We normally do it live, so maybe we're not going to do it now because we're already going late. I think what we'll do is
at the end of the episode.
No, I think another day, this like maybe on Sunday or something, or Monday. Like you and I will do a quick check-in.
You want me to stop over after I close up the shop Sunday?
Or we can do remote, whatever.
Okay.
Between now and the next episode, we've got. You want to do it now? I can pull it up real quick. Do you want to do it?
Doesn't matter to me.
We'll do it. Yeah, we'll do it.
What are we raffling? Bring it up.
All right, real quick. So you guys can hear this on the second part here. So I'm gonna.
How do you do the raffle? Do you just like pull?
You're gonna pick numbers here.
Oh, perfect.
Real quick. I'm gonna let's expedite.
I dig it.
Don't throw it. So we have three prizes.
Yes.
So we're gonna do a set here, right? We got the cutter and what is this fancy leather goods we have here?
A leather bound like cigar holder. Yeah, it's gorgeous. This is the first time I've seen it in person. I sent them to you and I had no idea what
You're welcome. Like.
Yeah. So thanks for letting me see this.
Anytime you want to send us stuff for the podcast or just us.
Little loops, thank you, for the cigars, and then you've got some pockets in here for your accessories, lighters, cutters, granola bar. I don't know.
Let's see if you're still on the list. You're on the list.
And then there's a cutter in there, so you can put the cutter in the nifty little accessory holder area.
It's like a kind of a roll up.
Mm-hmm. Very classy.
Very classy. Yeah. I think Indiana Jones would carry something like that.
I agree.
If he smoked cigars, yeah.
There you go.
I like to think that Indiana Jones smokes cigars.
Low profile.
All right, so what we're gonna do? All right, we got three of these things. So for those listening on the audio, we don't do this normally on the audio, but this is actually probably good, so you guys know that this is happening. Patreon.com/bourbonandbs podcast. Also, if you want to make a one-time donation to the show or give us a suggestion and pay for the bottle, we will prove it to you that we're going to do it. There's a Venmo at bourbonandbs is the Venmo. You guys can actually make us buy something and make us drink something. I'm good with that. Nate?
Absolutely.
I figured you would.
Does it have to be like bourbon or whiskey, or can it be something like totally random?
Just don't screw us. I'm not doing Jägermeister, all right? Don't fucking do Goldschlager and that shit, right?
We have
Dr. McGillicuddy's.
We have had cachaça.
If you send us like
really?
$20 and say Goldschlager, no refunds.
Thank you for your $20.
Now you know
it will go towards the.
And thank you for bottle. Joe Smith for donating $20 for Goldschlager. Tonight we're going to be drinking on behalf of Joe Smith. Is this? So I need you to pick, Laurel. We got three of them.
Yes.
3 sets.
Yes.
1 through 19, including 1 and 19.
Okay.
So let's hear your first number.
8.
8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. David Gordon, I got a package coming for you. It's going to be full.
Cool.
He's got a couple other prizes actually in the garage he needs to get. Yeah.
I'm glad I brought those boxes.
Good job, David Gordon.
All right, 1 through 19 again, not 8.
I can't pick him twice.
No, don't. Let me just don't.
11.
Poor tact. All right, so he was 8, 9, 10, 11. Alexander Rice. Also have other prizes. All right.
Same number?
Not the same number, 1 through 19, but not 8 or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, but like the same.
Yeah,
same
parameters.
Same
1.
Corey Goodrich. He's part of Bobby's crew.
Hirschman?
Yeah.
Nice.
And to Dana Cornwell, we ran out of time. Thanks for showing up tonight. We appreciate your support.
Dave Gordon's actually listening, and he just said, woohoo.
Yeah, Dave's coming. Dana Cornwell.
Tell you what, I got a cigar for you.
Matt Damon. He's our Matt Damon. And our apologies.
I'm
to
sorry.
Dana Cornwell. We ran out of prizes, but thanks we'll get you next time. All right. And back
he
to the show.
He got a cigar for showing up in the garage.
Oh, get your hands out. That's not it.
Oh,
nice.
Right in the
Good
bread
catch.
the
basket.
Navy man can catch.
All right. So now that you can move that box now, there, Nate. All right, so they can see. Oh, don't take the mic down. All right. So part 2. That was good. I like doing that on part 2. That's fun.
See, everything happens for a reason.
All right. So how did I word this? Growth or change? Yeah.
Change and growth.
Change and growth. That's what I said. Let's see if I can pull this up here.
So is this in regards to like weight gain during COVID or?
It can be. It can be.
Stop.
So the way I framed this in the description, we were looking at the difference in relationship between change and growth in life. Does one lead to another, or does one inhibit the other? I think, so in the intermission, if you guys are just joining us on the live, if you're listening to part 2, you didn't listen to the intermission when we were doing this. Again, great reminder, you guys can listen to this show live on Facebook or YouTube on Wednesday nights around 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Still standard.
There's debate about that earlier in the shop.
It'll be EDT in like 2 weeks.
All right, so yeah, all right. 7:30 on the East Coast, whatever it is for you guys, wherever you're at in the world. Ray, it's like 9:30 in the morning or whatever.
Yeah.
But we were talking about, like, we had questions about, how we in the industry, the cigar industry, of how you produce it, how do you project, all that stuff. And I think that it was a great segue actually to that, because we were talking about, with Laurel doing these projects that, sometimes you project it, it does better than you think, it does worse than you think, it does what you expect as far as that goes. But all the while you're actually making the product, you're rolling the cigars, you're making sure that all the parts that need to go into it, all those pieces, the moving parts, are available. But in the meantime, as time goes on, obviously circumstances change, the response changes in the cigar world of what is new, and on the same token, you're actually working on other projects.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have a team there. But the whole thing with this is having Laurel on, I thought that change or growth. We talked about the fact that on the last time, you've been a part of Macanito. We mentioned it this time. You've been a part of Macanito for 5 years, but this is not your first step into the cigar industry. And on top of that, now you've been with Macanito, like I said, for 5 years. You were based out of where before?
Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm. And now you live where?
Nashville.
In the last 5 years, you not only worked with this company, you've moved more recently. You also got married.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
As I hear my dog barking in the background.
Oh, yeah. He was none too pleased that I went inside and did not acknowledge him.
Yeah. Tony's not pissed. He just misses everyone. Like literally everyone.
He just
everyone
wants to be
listening
out
on the
here.
audio right now in your car on like a random Sunday on your weekend trip back home. Tony
in
misses
the
you.
background, like
Tony's like, I want to see you too. Where are you?
Oh, what a love.
But that's the whole thing, change or growth. I think it's very intimidating to a lot of people, the fear of the unknown.
Oh, for
right.
sure.
So that's something that we all deal with. Some people can just dive in no matter what. Some people respond to change that is outside of their control. And I think that that's where the growth comes in. That's why the topic I thought of with having Laurel on is that at the very, I guess, surface level is the things that you've gone through and how you've dealt with those changes. That did it lead to growth easily? Did they challenge those two topics or those two mentalities, or kind of like what came first? Did you need to grow and that's why you made the change? Because sometimes if you stunt the growth of your professional career, your relationship, or anything else in life, you talked about like joking maybe about the weight gain and like during COVID and stuff like
right,
that. Yeah, it's totally joking. But it's like one of those things like that people were dealing with their health issues that were maybe out of their control.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, kind of walk us through, like, you used to work into the retail side of this.
Yes.
Before that, you were doing what? Oh, boy.
So
I don't remember the answer to this.
So before I worked for the cigar shop that I used to, Yuli's in Milwaukee, I was at the time holding down 3 jobs. I worked as a waitress.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at a children's clothing store. And I also did like the 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. shift at Domino's. So typically day to day.
That's a hot shift.
Yeah, it was. Traded pizza for like beer and stuff though, so that wasn't too bad. I mean, I like the people I worked with, so which I think is very helpful. So I was typically working 2 of the 3 jobs every day. I had dropped out of college for a while. I had gone to college for 2 years, and I originally went for physical therapy. I could not be any farther away from what I originally intended on.
What was the major?
Physical therapy.
Sure.
Yeah, totally. So I went to college for a couple of years, really couldn't afford it. Didn't know what I wanted to do. It was kind of floundering, and took some time off, and I was just working a bunch of odd jobs to support myself. And I was a customer at the cigar shop, and I ended up kind of campaigning for a job there. And I was like, I'm here all the time. I know the product to some capacity. I know the people, like, please hire me. So I got hired part-time, and then I was in conjunction with that, I was a bartender. And then eventually I got hired on full-time after about 6 months. Thank God. It was much easier to work one job than it was to work three.
One would think.
Yes. And I feel like I'm losing my train of thought here. So when I went back, I went for advertising and public relations. So I took about 5 years off and gathered everything together, try to figure out what I was good at, what I enjoyed, what I thought that I could see myself doing in the future. And it was really difficult because I feel like you put a lot of pressure on young adults to say, like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? I don't fucking know. Like at 18, I don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. What's going to make me happy? I mean, Yeah, exactly. And so I kind of just thought about, like, what do I enjoy? Like, what am I good at? How can I hone that in a career? And I don't want to say I didn't intend to stay in the cigar industry because I really enjoyed it, but it's just such a small, in all reality, it's a very niche industry, and there's not a lot of opportunity. I know I'm flaking everywhere here. There's not a ton of opportunity to break into it. And so I had applied at like a bunch of ad PR firms kind of half-heartedly. And this job sort of just kind of came up through people I knew. And, I've been here 5 years now. I've been in the cigar industry for over 10.
I was going to say, you were at the retail side for 5, right?
And in a little over 5. And in some respects, it feels like I got in last week. And then in some respects, it feels like I've been doing this my entire life. I'm only 30. So, you figure a third of my life has been dedicated to cigars.
You're making Mike feel bad out
I'm sorry, Mike.
About himself, not about you.
Whatever. Don't give me that. So, and I think it was something that was really out of my comfort zone. When I wasn't in college and I was watching my friends graduate and start their careers, it really kind of made me feel bad about myself. And I was like, man, what am I doing with my life?
Well, we talked about the last time you were on, because that was a part of a little series about, women in the industries. Like
she was part 2.
Yeah, we had Amy on from McClellan's, and we had Laurel on, and that was it, right? With the 2-parter.
Yeah, she was part 2, and then part 1 was, I think, Amy and Spencer was on with her.
Yeah, which we have coming up actually in the next couple of weeks.
Nice.
Next week.
But that was one of those things. You say you're 30 now.
Yeah.
So at 20 years old,
I started in cigars.
You're like, hey, this is the change I need, is to go into the cigar industry.
Well, and I started working there because I enjoyed the product and I enjoyed the culture, and it sort of just became my life. Not in a bad way. I look at the relationships I have today. 90% of them are still because of the cigar industry. I met my husband working at that shop. Most of my close friends have been connections I've made through the cigar industry. And I think that sort of, it forced me into the change of not doing the conventional graduate high school, 4-year university, started career, sort of forced growth. I grew a lot in the 5 years that I was at the cigar shop, and I would argue that I've grown a lot in just the 5 years I've been with this company, just in my own personality, and kind of like figuring out, I don't want to be like who I am, but just kind of,
I think in all fairness,
being stronger, if that makes sense.
I think it's easy for us to put on 20 to 30, those are easy ages. You know, I think every 5 years, personal opinion is that every 5 years you have grown a lot. It's something that with not only your own personal growth, your own, even like physically, you know what I mean? It's you can't say 5 years. A lot of people say 7 years. You have that 7-year itch. Like they talk about like in your body, like you can gain and lose allergies every 7 years because every cell in your body has been regenerated. So there's a lot of that into that. But I think we as people, we think like, oh, at 20 years old, I was this, 30 years old, I was this, 40 years old, I'm this, and so on. Is you want me to keep going there, Mike? So at 70, I'm this, you know what I mean? I think that this is something that you may not think that, but you had that 5 years in the retail. So that was like 20, you had that experience, three jobs, and all of a sudden, like you made a huge step, and like, have one job.
Yeah, and it was 5 years there, and I eventually went back for my degree and graduated, and then I was actually hired by General about 4 months prior to my graduation.
Mm-hmm.
So I was already working here before I officially had my degree, which I'm so thankful for. To
what was
find
your
a
first
job.
role with General?
I was an event manager.
Mm-hmm.
So like Ricky, right? So
Yep.
I worked a lot with Ricky early on.
That's
and
when I
sort
first
of
met
did
you,
like
at the 10 event.
Yes,
Yep.
the sort of like the back end logistical stuff. And so I started in early October, and I was approached in February about an ambassador position. And then I officially took the role in, I want to say, August of the following year. So less than a year at the company before I took this position. So, I mean,
which you were thrilled about, obviously. That's a huge growth in a small amount of time.
And I am very appreciative for the opportunities that I've had here. And I really like genuinely enjoy what I do. So I'm very lucky. It is one of those things where, you know, at the time I felt really kind of bad about myself because I was watching everybody else seemingly grow and move forward with their lives where I felt like I was a bit stagnant. Mm-hmm. And then I went back, took this job, and then I kind of looked at other people in my circle and said, well, you know, I mean, it took me longer to get here, but I ended up somewhere that I genuinely like, and I, you know, genuinely enjoy what I do. So I think that, you know, not to be cliche here, that everybody or everything happens for a reason, but I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is you sort of create your own path and then you kind of just see where you end up. I mean, if I was in high school and had to say, what did I think I would be doing when I was 30? It would not be this.
Be a cigar brand ambassador.
So
sit in a garage on a Wednesday on a podcast.
And I like
everyone can
in
dream.
Ohio.
Yeah.
Everyone can dream.
And I like change. I like change and I like growth. And I don't want to change my career because I enjoy it. And so sort of what precipitated the move was we just need to do something different. I've always I grew up in Wisconsin. I moved an hour from my childhood home to go to university. So it's not like I moved that far. I always had dreams of studying abroad, but I just didn't have the finances to support it. And you know, it was something like I always wanted to move. And my husband was kind of in the same boat. Like he went to school about an hour away from where he grew up. And we kind of had a short list of places we wanted to go. And we're like, you know what? Fuck it. I can kind of work from anywhere.
Yep.
That makes sense, obviously. Like you can't be like near this tiny little boony airport off in the corner of the country. That
sounds quaint though.
Nice. And with his job, he went work from home permanently after, with COVID.
So that was circumstantial.
Yeah. So they shut down their office and sold everything off. And he went work from home permanently with COVID. So we were able to relocate. And it's just, it pushed us out of our comfort zone for sure. And I think, kind of going back to your point, we needed that change to grow because, you get comfortable in your relationships, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't want to discount the friends that we have back in Milwaukee because they're still very much a part of our lives, but it is just the two of us. We do not know anybody beyond a few reps in this new area. So I think
it's been how long though?
2 months.
2 months.
And we only moved. I mean, literally November 1st will be our 2-month anniversary. So very, very new. Yeah. And it's been so far good. People are very nice. The food is great.
Yeah.
Music
scene.
I'm already broke on live music. So
not broke on live music, broke financially.
Broke from live music.
Because you've gone to live music. Ray says out there, his first move away from home was 8,000 miles.
Wow.
I mean, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, again, I go back to the fear of the unknown. I think there's a level of comfort that a lot of people settle into.
Yeah.
We've had, I forget what we framed this topic, not this topic, but that topic in a sense that, the fear of the unknown or when things are out of control, right? And you wait until the cards are dealt to you that you make that change. Yeah. And now the growth is, I think, hindered by that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not always. The other side of that,
you're not growing because you're choosing to.
Right. The flip side of that is you're always looking for something better, right? And there's something admirable if you can keep that in check as well. But I mean, again, I look at, one of the things so Mike in the garage, I've known him for 9 years, whatever. It's something that he's been in this industry in a certain role, 3 decades, 30, but he has moved around a little bit. He's been all Midwest. But there's so much, and you so 3 decades in this industry, and grab the mic, Sean. We take that over to him real quick. Is is what I see a lot of times with that is that people that are so aggressive for change that they don't allow themselves to grow. So turn that back.
You
So
got to speak just above where that black tape
that's
is.
all right. So yeah. So my point is, though, you've seen, I saw this in my previous career, right? Is that I had salespeople working for me where you saw the resume and you learn it real quick. Is that if you have like 2 years doing this, 2 years doing this, 3 years doing this, 2 years, then they show up at your doorstep and you're like, yeah, I'm going to kick ass here. And you're like, yeah, but why?
But
and
for
then
2 years.
And then a year or two later, they're like, yeah, this isn't right. I'm not making enough money. I need to do this. I need to do that. And I'm like, you've been fucking doing this for a decade. You've seen those people come and go. Yeah.
Many reps come and go.
There you go.
Some people have a passion for it. Like I'll say, I met Miguel and he worked in front of a Tinder Box in Cincinnati.
So,
and the lady at Tinder Box,
It's a point of contention.
And
here we go back to
the issue was the manager of the store didn't smoke cigars. I usually leave the samples with him at a jewelry store. And one day I ran into him. He said, I really want to be in the cigar business. How do I get in it? And I go, I kind of lucked into it just at a trade show. And he tried desperately for a couple of years to break into the business. When he did, he excelled. He did a great job with CAO. He's been with several companies. And he didn't leave.
Not because of the reason I'm saying. He's not looking for the next biggest thing.
Every time he went to a company, they got bought.
General Cigar bought him. And I'm like, man, you can't win for losing. I mean,
he's winning again.
Again, he's winning, but he excelled. They bought CAO. He went to try. They bought. I'm like, poor guy. I mean, he
would just work for General.
He just might as well come work for us when they make another merger.
But then to your point, like, so after Tarano got bought, he went and worked for another smaller company.
Duran.
Roberto Duran. He went to them because like he had passed up other opportunities with other bigger companies. He went with them because he wanted to grow a smaller family-owned business. And he tried that for a couple of years, and it just like they just didn't have the name. It didn't really kick off the way he wanted.
The resources is what they did.
Yeah. But then another opportunity came that had the resources,
full circle,
people he knew, and so he made that change.
A manager years
to get
ago
that growth
said, "How do you know?" And I told him I can work with a person in 2 or 3 days, and you either know
a salesperson
that you either know, or they either have it or they don't. It's not something they teach in college or high school.
Yeah,
I mean, there's not a class how to be a rep.
I mean, there's been people I've worked with where I've been with them for an hour and
talking to the mic like people
been with that. Sorry, people I've worked with where I've been with them for a few hours, and I said, you're a great person, but I don't think you're gonna be here for more than a year.
It's just, I mean, Dan Burris is another one. When I met Dan,
so Dan is he's not been on the show. He's supported it. We've had some cigars.
Dan's with Davidoff, but he was with Hulk Aurora, and they were purchased by us at Altadis and Commonwealth. And, he's bounced around, but he's still in the industry. He likes the industry. You either like it or you don't.
Yeah.
So I think the ones, and I've seen this in the cigar industry, and those listening out there, they're not all in the cigar industry. We have some cigar enthusiasts. We have some bourbon enthusiasts that listen to this. We have some people that enjoy them both, but they just listen to part 2. I've had that, been said to me as well. But I think it's a great example of the fact that you have these people that you're either change and growth. I like this topic because a lot of times it's interchangeable to some people, but if you really dive into what those two concepts are in your life, if you're looking for growth, that can lead to change. If you're looking for change,
it can lead to growth.
It can, but I think more often than not, growth will lead to change in a positive way, whether you're expecting it or not. But you have the people you're bringing up, and I think that's I brought that up of like when I brought this that question up in a sense of you have those salespeople that are looking every 2 years, they're looking for the next best thing, and in life that doesn't have to be sales, that can be anything, relationships. It's like keeping up with the Joneses, right? I got a car. It's like, oh shit, someone else got a car. Now I got to get another car. I got to get another house. I got to do this. I got to dress a certain way. You're always looking for what they consider growth, but it's purely surface level change. You talk about these people that I think that you have respect for in the cigar industry, the cigar sales industry more specifically, is that their efforts were pure growth, and they want to grow themselves. They want to grow people around them. And I think that's where this subject is that when you have the growth, I don't think it's just you internally. A lot of times it's actually growth for yourself, depending on the circumstances. I think it's something that you want to grow yourself, but in the end game is that you grow yourself so that you can grow people around you is, I think, the most honest effort. Everyone succeeds. Change sometimes, more often than not, especially in the sales, or if you just change things, you can bring people with you, but sometimes, and I feel like you're disagreeing with me, Laurel, a little bit, which I can't wait. No, because I see it. I got good peripheral.
Okay.
No, because
Unlike
there's no right answer to this, honestly. So I think
I just have a really stern resting face.
it's called never mind.
Yeah, what was that?
RBF?
It's called resting bitch face. It could be guys or girls. It's not getting in that conversation. Jesus Christ. Let's get in that conversation. No, but my point is that change a lot of times I feel like is something that you're looking forward to, or you look forward to because it's more internal. You need change for yourself.
Agreed.
It can be the other thing. Like, I want change for my family. I want change for this. I need to do this. But I think growth has a more positive connotation to it.
Well, you take some of the reps in the industry now and just pick the Midwest. There's been many reps with several different companies, but they're still in the business because they like the business. They like what they do. Someone asked me one day, what the hell made you choose cigars? I go, kind of chose me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was telling Laurel, the first cigar I ever smoked was an 858 Fuente, and I bought it from Cynthia Fuente in a place in Terre Haute. I'd never had a premium cigar in my life. And people go, did you like it? I go, yeah. Never smoked a cigarette in my life.
How much did you pay for it?
No, I was in college. And it was just,
he was
I mean,
lamenting
the
that
prices
like
have went up drastically, but back then when they were $1.59 a stick,
there you go, $1.59.
I go, it was incredible when I told Cynthia you could get an 8-pack of, pack of Swishers for 88 cents. I thought she was going to fall over. I didn't know at the time.
1950.
No, this is back in the early 90s.
1959.
In the early 90s. And the industry, when I got in the industry, Steve, honestly, I went to the first meeting and everybody there was like in their 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, my God, it's like a retirement center. I mean, everyone was old.
This is where I can see myself.
Yeah, I mean, but the people that had passion for the business had been in it for 30, 40 years.
That's what Laurel thought when she met you.
Yeah. Laurel could be my niece. But
I knew Mike before I started.
Yeah. But it's like the industry's changed, but it's evolved.
Yeah.
When I started, there wasn't that many companies. Now, my God, there's new ones every day. When I went to the first trade show in Orlando, it was 3 rows of booths. And like I said, Lito Gomez had a 10 by 10 little card table. And I went, that's a company. Yeah. I mean,
you still see those at the trade show. They just try to show off.
Mike, my question to you is, being in the business for 3 decades, what did you like better when you started? And what do you like better now about the industry?
The technology.
Okay.
Back when I started, we had pagers. And honest to God, my niece came to my house and went, what is that? I go, it's a pager. What do you mean? I go, they would page you. You would call the office. You put orders into the fax machine, which nowadays people don't even have a fax. I mean, it's all, it's all digital.
Yeah.
The ordering process is much cleaner. I mean, when Brian first opened, you had to physically take the sales sheets around to all the stores. Well, if you had 3 or 4 states, it literally took 2 months. Now you hit a button.
Still have reps that do that because they don't have the digital that you guys have.
But it's digital. You can hit a button and I can cover 120 customers in 30 seconds, which that I like the change of that. But in retrospect, back when I started, the prices that's the part I kind of, Romeo and Juliet at Bully was $44 a box for 25.
Yeah.
And I sit there and I go, how did we get to the point where we're at? And everybody goes, why is it so much more now? And I go, it's the taxes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the retailer. They really think that the
yeah.
retailer is making a bunch of money. And I go, honestly, the government's making.
Yeah, I think the generation we're in right now, though, I mean, like circumstance we're in right now is we've had this before, the 70s, 80s, like 60s, 70s, 80s, and all that stuff. And we're seeing it again now, is that there are a lot of circumstances also that everything, it's in the forefront. It's on the news right now, is that containers are going up in price. The price of pay to get this shit out there, all that production, all that stuff, it's all going up very quickly. we had some questions here. I do want to throw out here.
So what I
Go
can't
ahead.
wrap my head around is some of the people who've been working for us for like 20, 25 years. And I was like, how did you get to these accounts out in the freaking boonies without a GPS? Like, I think for me,
Fucking Atlas.
Atlas, yeah, the foldable road maps.
I was in the moving industry for 10 years, right? And even like in Franklin County, where we're at right now, like I would not like to be. I mean, obviously the technology, but it all costs. I was during that transition, right? So like when I started as a mover at 19. I knew Atlas, but we didn't have smartphones or anything like that. We didn't have GPS. Like TomToms weren't even a thing, right? So it's like you had a map book. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with map books. It was like, all right, so you look up a street. You're like, oh, it's Happy Street. That's on 30A4. And so you had that was part of the training for your trainees.
Remember.
Like, all right, so 30 means page 30. A is you look at the grid, it's A and then 4. I'm like, okay, I found it. I'm like, so how do I get there? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, look at where it's at, and then take it back to a highway, and then take it back to another highway, take it back to where we're at right now. And they're like, I don't understand. I'm like, Jesus Christ, give me the map book.
Yeah.
and then you look at it, so there's a training there. So I do want to bring up before we get to those questions on the feed from Ray and Daniel, but it's I had that experience. You talk about technology, and it's so cool to talk to people that have been in an industry for a while there from a sales aspect, because we take technology for granted so much right now. But again, Mike not being on the show because he didn't want to be on the show, but he's now on the show. You guys can't see him. It's debatable whether, I was going to say it's debatable whether or not you want to, but we have him on the show, which is great because you have a lot of experience in sales, in this industry, in life, and everything else. But on this topic, I know that when someone comes to someone that's been doing things by hand, right? So this is the technology that maybe some people have been through, they haven't been through, but it's like, I used to be able to just handwrite it, and then I faxed it or whatever, and then you guys took care of it. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, we have this new app that you need to actually learn how to use. And you're like, what? Why? This worked. There is like that
the reluctance to adopt
reluctance. You're reserved to be like, no, this worked, no problem. Like in the moving industry, when I learned how to do an estimate, an on-site estimate, like I could walk out to a house, and I learned on a legal pad. This wasn't even they had sheets out there, but the guy I learned from was like, I was like, what do I need to learn? He's like, got a pen and a legal pad. I'm like, yeah. It's like, all right. So you walk in, you're like, all right, so living room. You're like, all right, sofa, 60. I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, you'll find out. And it's like, you just wrote it all down. And then all of a sudden you do all this, you cube it. And like, this is going to be foreign language to people. That person that trained me, I then became their boss. And then I was in charge of saying, hey, we have this new technology. This is before iPads and everything else, but you have a touchscreen Toshiba. Right? Yeah. So I'm like, all right, so now you just go out there with this, and you touch this, and you take the stylus out and all this stuff. And like, this was like a guy in his 40s, and he's like, why would I do that? I'm like, because it'll save you more back end, because you're gonna have to re-enter this because we don't have someone to re-enter it for you. This was a sticking point for like 2 years.
At my former
employer, that reluctancy to change.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, our former employer, years back when they went to the first generation iPad, we had a guy in Tennessee, Jerry Campbell, and he's like, this can tell where I'm at every day. And they go, yeah, it has a GPS tracking device that's good within 12 feet. And a couple of the older reps from like New Orleans and the Carolinas went, so if I'm at the golf course, can it tell them at the golf course? And I'm like,
yeah.
Yes, it can.
If you got it with you.
The next week, we lost like 4 reps that went, that's a little intrusive. And I go, but it's built to help you. No faxing, just email it in. And they're like, yeah,
not into it.
Not into this.
It's changed.
It changed. Well,
not only fear of the unknown, but you know what it is. Like, it's fear of change.
Yeah.
And it's the technology. I'm at the cusp of, I had to learn the technology because it was coming. No matter if I stayed in the industry, you had to learn it. But now, I mean, you have Salesforce, you have tracking, we have global GPS tracking on the thing that tells you it'll tell you exactly where you're at.
They know my address.
They know the exact, with that iPad's on, they know where you're at. But the older reps in the generation before me, they didn't like that, but it's changed. They didn't like that. 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 But it's changed. They d because the job was very comfortable.
Yeah.
And if they could just pull over and get a haircut and then go play golf, and believe me, the industry's changed.
Do you think there's a hesitance to change if you comfortable, but also it's not a lack of understanding. It's you think you know better.
Sometimes
I think that's a component.
It's one of those things. I think there's a tripping point or an obstacle where it's like you have this, and this can be in the sales or what we're talking about here or anything else, is that things have been working out. Like it works well the way it is. Why would we reinvent the wheel? Mm-hmm. Even though there's true reasons, and like we're talking about technology here with that, is like there's true reasons that once you get to know it, you're gonna have the obstacles of the smoothness of it, the learning, the transition, right? Yeah, absolutely. There's one of those things is like, yeah, it's like IT people. I hate that where it's like, well, what if it doesn't work? And they're like, oh, it will, because we have like it's worked out. And like, what if it doesn't work? And they're like, it will. And you have this like back and forth like 5 times. You're like, all right, I'll take your word for it. And then it's just like you're waiting for the I told you so when you're like, hey, so I did it and the internet was down, so you guys didn't get it. And you're like, we didn't expect that.
The next generation of what I call cigar salespeople, Josh Bentley, Paul, Miguel, to them, the technology was, they already knew the technology because they took it in school when they was in college.
Dude, there's 5-year-olds that can use an iPad.
Right. But what I'm saying to them, it was.
Not saying Josh Bentley. I'm saying like.
But they already had the technology. The technology, when it changed, to them, it was easy sailing. But to the generation above them, it wasn't.
So I had a question from Ray. My question would be, did the use of the tablets increase sales / efficiency
and productivity? You followed that up.
You could reach out to multi-states when you cover multi-states, like I said, instantly, and increased efficiency. You had more time to actually spend with customers. Like I said, you hit a button, you send the sales sheets out, it's there. So you had more time to actually visit stores to spend with them because you knew that those sheets all went out. But physically taking samples in, I mean, you still have to get the product in your hand, Brian's hand, for people to try it.
I like this point because that is something that when you're sitting around, the IT side of it or boardroom or, like one of those things where, you look at this, like the growth part of it, when you implement change too quickly. While we're talking about this particular example is you talk about that. You're like, all right, I got a tablet right now. Right. And when the iPad came out, it didn't necessarily have cell service. So you go out there and you're like, all right, so I used to be able to just write it down. And then when I got back to the hotel or when I got back to wherever, I fax it in, got back to the office, it was delayed. You want it instantaneously. Like, hey, we didn't get those orders. And I was like, that's because it was in BFE. Like they don't have Wi-Fi. They don't have cell service. You gave me this. And it's like, I'm punching it in. I'm trying to send it and it won't go. They're like, why not? And you're like, because I'm not in Miami. I'm not in
metropolitan area.
I'm not in a city. Like, what are you talking about? They're like, they don't have. Like literally broadband is not available everywhere right now, even like today in 2021. If you have a cigar shop, hopefully they have it. But if you like people that build a house like out in the country, like they have to pay to have that shit dug into like that point and take it from where it is. And you're like, well, we don't pay for that. You're like, well, then you got to deal with satellites and dial up like that. We have phone lines. So I think that sometimes it is the horse in front of the cart type thing. You know what I mean?
But I will say that technology has increased the amount. It's decreased the amount of time it takes for the actual rep to get around to all those stores. Because when you got 3 or 4 states, you're not going to get around in 3 or 4 weeks. Even if you did 8 stores a day, driving time alone in some of these states like Montana and Iowa, you're going to be there for a while.
Well, now you have these apps that people can go on and order and they don't necessarily even have to see you. And I mean, so that is just.
You guys place some of your orders, unless it's a specialty item or something, or you have a question, you guys use our B2B. And when I deal with some of the customers who are a little bit older than I am, and I go, you just go on the app, you can pull up your own invoices right here. And they're like, no, you just pull it up for me and send me a copy. And I'm like, but you could do it in 2 minutes. I'll walk you through it. There's a reluctancy of anyone 60 plus, they're like,
people are impervious to what you have to say because they're just like, well, no, I've always done it this way. And why would I do it anything differently? Kind of going back to what you were saying.
Yeah.
But a lot of those stores have gone. They've either the retailers have sold or they've gone away. When I started, there was a lot of store owners like Pipes and Pleasures, Rosvita.
You don't have to say every name.
You
don't say every name. And that's the thing. Like, you're not on the podcast, but
But what I'm saying is like,
I love
trying them with technology. Boy, that was tough. I was like, just you can get online and look at the price list. And she's like, no.
She wants that physical.
She wants a physical piece of paper. I said, it weighs 7 pounds. The price list's big. Bring me the price list.
Let me put this to Laurel, because I think this is something that, with your role in this industry, I think there can be a direct correlation given the last 18 to 24 months. You're working on something that is a consumable product, right? Luxury, if you want to say that, but we saw a cigar boom during 2020.
Yes,
we did.
For sure.
And why was that, do you think?
I think a lot of people were at home. Maybe people who were cigar smokers, they were novice cigar smokers, maybe once a month, once a quarter, saying, I'm home. I've got the time. I have the opportunity. Maybe they're trying to do something different. You can't go out to a bar, or you have friends in like a socially distant circle and you're all trying to, connect over something. Yeah. I mean, I think just the opportunity was there you had more time to enjoy this product. And I think a lot of people were maybe taking hobbies that were sort of, like C or D level hobbies. Oh, they dabbled in it occasionally. Oh, well, I wonder if there's anything online that, I can learn a little bit about it, or you can watch something like Bourbon and BS and, consume something that is relating to that. And it just sort of brought it to the forefront.
Yeah. So Ray just asked this, and we have other people out there. Daniel, I know you're out there. I'm sorry. I'm just again, trying to talk about this and also put these out there. But, I get that I get that they may be able to cover more ground through less paperwork, but bottom line is that to increase sales. I want to take that comment and question, but to what I was trying to say with Laurel, I saw in the last 18 to 24 months is that we thought that there were a lot of industries, a lot of people out there that thought that we have the technology. And that was one of the things when you shut things down, we couldn't have done this before. Not to dive into the rabbit hole, but like the model of shutting things down based on something like COVID-19 was out there before this. The only way that I think that it was reasonably available to do was the fact that we had the means, we had the Zoom, we had the technology that was beating up Skype. No one even uses Skype anymore. No. Like, it's like literally like Skype was like the big thing, right? And then FaceTime came out. I remember like when you had Steve Jobs out there, like with the iPhone 4, and it's like now you can actually see someone talking. I'm like, that's amazing. Like, you know what I mean? And then I got an iPhone 4 and I never FaceTime anyone because I just talked to them on the phone or texted them because it was like, this is amazing. Yeah, I didn't need to, but it was like one of those things. Like, but you had the means out there. I am of the opinion that with certain things, certain industries, certain feelings, certain relationships that you have, and that's what I was getting to with Laurel, is that you come out with a new product. You can come out with, it's going to age me, but like basically a glorified PowerPoint. You have a presentation. You have a YouTube video. You go on podcasts remotely. You go on all this stuff. And they're like, hey, I got this new cigar. I got a Macanudo Inspirado Brazilian Shade. And you talk it up. You talk it all out, all that stuff. What's that? But how do you get it in their hands? So that's those things that like, yeah, you could bail on brick and mortar. You can bail on malls. You can bail on all that stuff. And here's what I will say that I love about the current situation that we're in right now is that it is a full circle thing that we went through in the last 24 months with like the change in growth. You had no option other than to change what you're doing unless you were already ahead of the curve, right?
Yes.
So all of a sudden during the pandemic, during this last 24 months, no matter what country you're in, you had no other option than you saw the Zoom stock go up, follow the money, right? Zoom stock goes up, all this stuff goes up, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, holy shit, we can't get product to people because we thought everyone could work from home. Huh. So now where are we at? Well, we were going to do it online, but now you're ordering online and now it's not available online because we actually have to get products to people.
Yeah.
So it's very fascinating to me is that they put the change as a society, as a global society, that the change happened, but the growth was an afterthought. So it's like one of those things like with you in this industry, Laura, I'm sorry, but like for you with the project, take away everything I just said on that, but you have a new product.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it online if it's seamless.
Yeah.
You can do it from home. You can do it from Milwaukee. You can do it from Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
But part of your role is actually to get in front of people and to have the relationships.
Yes. There's only so much you can do on social media. And I mean, the pandemic really forced me to change and arguably grow. Like I was grounded for 10 months. I mean, my last flight in 2020. Even you
saying that, you look defeated.
It was, I'm not going to lie, I struggled.
Yeah.
I'm very much a social person, and it just threw me for a loop. And you feel waking up every day and being like, okay, now I will say like General was an amazing company to work for to weather the storm, but like you just, my guilt, like you'd feel like, okay, how am I justifying my job? How am I justifying being here? Like what do I like? How much
core values there?
How much can I do to as much as it's available to me, as much as I can to a limited capacity, given the situation we're in. And so I started just doing like a ton of social media stuff. Like I made weekly videos. I did Facebook Lives. I did Instagram Lives. I did Cigar 101s, reviewed of all of our different products.
Home studio like this.
And yes. And I would say that the change forced me to grow because I'm good in front of people. You can put me in a crowd of 10,000 people and I can get up on a stage and I can talk till everybody is like, oh my God, we don't want to hear anything more from you. Like I have absolutely, thank you. I have absolutely no problem public speaking or being in front of people, but being on Facebook Live gives me like crazy anxiety.
Because you're by yourself.
It is just like, I cannot. So Sean Williams, I always envied because he's so just.
Sean Williams from Cohiba.
He was on last week. Yeah. He's just so natural. Like he just does it so organically. Like he'd go to an event and do the Facebook Live and it comes so, I don't want to say it comes so easy to him. Like I'm sure he had to work for it, but I like put me in front of people, actual people, no problem. Put me on a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live. And I'm like, I don't know what to do.
You don't seem like that. And you don't seem like that right now.
But
why
because
is that?
I'm with you.
You have people around you.
So,
social.
People are engaging. They're asking questions. They're commenting. We're able to have a conversation when it's me by myself on Facebook Live. And I was like, hey, who wants to say something? Like I can only, can only speak so much one-sided. Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that I got better doing this aspect of my job that is very important because social media arguably has more of a reach to some point than it does just seeing people in person. And I would prefer to see people in person, but obviously with the situation we were in, like there's only so much you can do. And I mean, I always try to look at the silver lining, right? What is the good in something? And I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that I really hated about COVID, but there's honestly a lot of things that were good. I mean, I communicated with some of my friends more because, I would people who lived separately, I would, text occasionally or whatever. And we started doing like video chats or like video messages. And I actually became closer with some friends and even like distant family members that I didn't necessarily talk to when things were normal.
Are you still close to them? This is an honest question.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, there's people that like, so take, for example, like my friend Samantha, right? She lived an hour away from me. And, I would see her for like New Year's, Halloween, Christmas, shit like that. And we would text occasionally. We were close for a long time. I had known her since like middle school.
Classic Samantha.
But when COVID hit and everybody was kind of just in this weird limbo, like we started just, talking every day. And I would say, my relationship with her in particular is tenfold stronger now than it ever was before. And I wasn't seeing her in person.
Do you find when you like look at like TV or are you on YouTube at all? Like watch it or
very seldom.
But I curious, like with what you just said, when you watch things like this, when you watch TV, when you see just one person talking, is it more comfortable? Is it less comfortable, or is it indifferent than when you see someone having a conversation, like people having a conversation on a video?
As far as
on TV,
consuming something, if I'm interested in the content and they're well spoken and what they're talking about, I mean, it makes sense and they can convey it like eloquently. I don't care if it's a panel of 10 people, a panel of 100 people, or one person by themselves. So it doesn't make me more comfortable or uncomfortable in that situation. It's me on one end of the camera like this. I mean, I could talk to you guys for friggin' 10 hours and have no problem.
But if Nate and I were not on there and you were just looking at yourself right now.
Would hate it. I would absolutely hate it.
You'd hate it more.
Yes.
But I think there's a reason that, like, when you have like the news out there, I think this is a very well studied thing with like just personal behavior, right? Is that you have at least two anchors. You watch the morning news, you watch the nightly news. If you do that, now I'm not talking about the content right now, because I've talked to so many people that they don't want to, they're like, yeah, I stopped watching news. I'm not talking about the content.
Yeah.
But the structure of it has been studied heavily for decades. And you have at least two anchors. And now you have, you have a weatherman, you have a traffic person, you have someone out in the field now, you have all this stuff. But it's this constant, the shifting. Like you feel like you're with this group of people.
Yeah.
As opposed to having a one-on-one.
Like they're inviting you into.
I got to be honest. This is something that I thought about recently because, I watched certain news shows or I watched YouTube videos. I was honestly researching Belle Mead. So one of the ways that I did it was I went on the website, I went on a couple of blogs, and then I went on YouTube. And I was watching, because we do this podcast, which goes on YouTube. We do this. This is more my comfort level, like you're talking about. And I look at this, like the change versus growth. And it's something that, like, when we first started this podcast, it was different. Now it's something that's grown, right? But when I watch someone literally just sitting in front of a microphone and giving a review of something and giving history, I'm literally now I'm one-on-one with this person. They don't know I'm watching because they did this like 10 months ago. But this is my engagement. I'm like,
it's like a personal conversation.
Okay. And do I like this person? Do I not like this person? Do I like what they're saying? Do I like their mannerisms? Like now all of a sudden I'm in this like interview process, right? With all this stuff. The news has been something that we've given up on as a society in a big way. But they've had all these studies, right? Where like they built this because there's so much money behind it, is that they literally will they're reading a teleprompter that forces their casual conversation. I start something and then Nate finishes it, and then he starts something, I finish it, and it's like, let's go to Pete with the weather and all this stuff. And it's like all of a sudden the Pete talks to me and all this stuff. You feel like you're just like casually just hanging out with friends, and you're like, oh, I don't have to look this person in the eye. I never have to look, and it's literally you're watching them.
I will tell you one thing. I've done all your 10 events. The one where we started the panel.
Yeah.
Which I love.
I thought it was a great thing. It was very entertaining to watch the people up on the stage go back and forth. And most of them are outside of business or friends, which is amazing, because I'm like, most industries, they wouldn't sit next to each other. And they're up there like, well, I make a better cigar. I do this. The cigar industry needs more of that. I like the panel thing was great when you guys did that the first time.
You know what the inspiration, personally, I've never said this before, is the roasts, like Dean Martin roasts.
We were talking about the roast today in the store.
I got to be honest, I never like forced it, but it was something that now I got to be intimidated by my own self, like when we do it next year. But it's like something that like you get that talent in a certain industry is it's never necessary. Like you have straightforward questions, but you hope for banter,
which we had
busting balls.
The first
no, but I'm telling you, like that is I think that's it's comfortable. It's comfortable for some people watching and listening, and the awkwardness is also comfortable to other people, that they're like, oh, this person just called out that person. It's just natural personal interaction that I love. That, to your point, is that it needs more of that because it doesn't happen enough.
No, that first year when we had the panel, I was like, this ought to be interesting, because you had a lot of heavy hitters up there, and they went back and forth, and I'm going, this is amazing, because, and later on that evening when we left, a lot of people goes, man, that was better than the last couple of years, because that wasn't part of the program the first couple of years. And it brought more of a sense of they're real people too.
It feels more relaxed.
Yeah,
it's an identity.
Yeah. And when you have personalities like Ricky, when you have personalities like Christian,
Eric, Nish,
and they're going back and forth, and I'm going. And there was somebody in front of our booth, and they went, "Are they friends?" And I go, "Yes." They flew in together.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
They had Bloody Marys on the plane.
Yeah. Like,
that's why he's drunk and he's kind of drunk.
But, I mean, what other industry do you see that? You don't see in the liquor industry. They don't get up and rate each other's stuff and banter each other because, I mean, I was in the liquor industry years ago, and I was like this. I go, this is strange. I mean, you don't see the head of Philip Morris slamming on the head of Ronald Williamson or RJ Reynolds. I'm like, this is cool. But
why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think it's more of a, years ago, when I first got in business, I didn't know that how many of these people were like related or married to like different people in their families. And I'm like going, the guy goes, you do know when they all left Cuba, they all, on the same program. They got kicked out together. Or left together. And I think they kind of unified, which made them, friends.
And to answer your question, I think there's some level of like adversity that whether you're a manufacturer or a rep or a consumer, that at least now in 2021, everybody has sort of had to overcome, whether it be, race, gender, just general perception of being a cigar smoker. I think there's a sort of like camaraderie that like everyone is sort of in it together, like fighting the man. Like they're all sort of like, yes, everybody's a competitor, but like you're there fighting for this common product that you all enjoy that is inherently something social.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I think what makes the cigar industry a little bit different is cigar smokers most of them do not, like, they call themselves cigar smokers. Like, I am a cigar smoker. They don't call themselves a Macanudo smoker or a Monte Cristo. Some, but most don't. Like, people don't say I'm a Macanudo smoker, I'm a Monte Cristo smoker, I'm a CAO smoker. I'm a love
for the industry.
I'm a cigar smoker, and most of them want to try as many different cigars that are out there that'll fit their palate. So I think that's one of the reasons why there's so much camaraderie in this industry. They want to get cigar smokers. They want to create new cigar smokers because they feel that anytime someone starts smoking cigars, they're not going to pigeonhole themselves into one brand or one type of cigar. They're going to expand their palette and their portfolio across many different brands, many different lines within brands.
All right, so let me ask you this, guys. Do an SAT type of a thing. When you look at change versus growth, and also subjective versus objective, how would you relate those four things?
In relation to just each other, or
in relation to the cigar industry or otherwise? I mentioned like change breeds growth, or growth brings change, or sometimes it's one or the other. I mentioned, I brought the topic, or the idea of growth is more all encompassing, change is personal, but is it subjective or objective?
I think growth is subjective.
Okay.
Because you're comparing where you were before to where you are now, but it's based on what you want to accomplish.
That's the key, is the second part of that.
And objective would be things that you could actually measure. So like someone could sit there and say, oh, I made a change from this job to this job, and that was growth because I'm making more money.
Yeah. But
did it grow you as a person? That would be a subjective thing that you would have to determine for yourself.
Yeah, like I changed cities, or I stopped drinking, or I started, so you can quantify, or not quantify, but
no, you did.
You can see.
You identified.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say.
If someone makes a career change and they want to do it for their own personal benefit, that's going to be subjective to them. how I measure growth could be different than either one of you measure growth.
Sure.
Yes.
But
Whereas change
change
is
change.
Yeah.
If I change, because I've made a couple of career changes before. When I made my first career change, it was because I didn't feel like I was growing. So I wanted to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
And that change was objectively based on income, subjectively based on was I happy doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then, when that then forced a change,
Yeah.
then it was, okay, I need to do something that maybe I'm comfortable with it or not, but it's at least something. I can't sit around and just do nothing.
You changed careers because you felt like you were in a box, or you needed to grow personally, or you needed to be challenged or have more opportunities. So that's subjective because it's for you personally. It doesn't necessarily translate to someone else. But yeah, I mean, I agree with that.
I think if you have to make a change, you have to realize that the change, career, relationship, or personally, if you're making it purely, it can go either way, subjective or objectively, but does it actually address the issue at hand? Or do you find yourself in the same situation? You change your scenario, you change your surroundings, but after a certain amount of time, you're back in the same scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I've dealt with that recently. I was in the same role within my company for a while and made the change because I didn't feel like I could grow anymore where I was doing what I was doing. So
you had desire to grow.
Yes. And so I made a change, and so far that growth has not come, and that's because of external factors, not myself. And I mean, but that's one of those things where just this week, because the growth is not where I thought it was, I'm already looking at change again.
There you go. Shannon, go ahead.
So in this growth and change, where do your values land? Do your values change during this? For me, when I changed careers and all that.
Yeah, this is Shannon Chapman, who's been on the show before. He shared his story about a year ago, at least.
Yeah.
Went from a truck
At
driver
least.
to a barber.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last February.
Yeah.
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 And then
So-
COVID happened, mind you. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So in my old career,
About
I was
time
just
that
working to
Laurel's
make
on
money
last time.
and live. Now I'm living to enjoy life, and I value my time more. So the money is a side note of what happens with it, but now I get to enjoy life more. I get to take more time, travel, be with my wife, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So in those values, like when you change careers, did your values change of what you wanted or what you expected?
Or did your values change, which made you make that precipitated the event? Is it,
absolutely.
oh, maybe I'm in an industry that doesn't necessarily jive with my personal or political views or whatever it may be, and then you've made a change based on that? Or did you make a change and then it sort of shifted your values based on the situation you're in?
Correct. Yeah.
I think there's no right answer, and Nate answer his question here, but I think sometimes, if you're just going off the subjective and feelings, you're not addressing. This is not a loaded thing. This is, Mike Sauerbach, he asked if there's like certain questions and like, is there like a format? You clearly now know there's not, right? Like this is a fucking conversation. But I look at it as that like there's not a right answer, because if you're just basing things off of your subjective and your feelings and what you think you should be entitled to or whatever it might be, you don't necessarily address the objective sides of the change, right? Or the growth, right? So there's not there. You can facilitate the change, but to have true growth, you actually have to. I'm of the opinion that you have to do both the subjective and the objective, because you can change your surroundings, you can change the people that are around you, you can change the job, the person you're with, your surroundings of where you live. You can move. This is not pointed at Laurel, but you can move within the city to a new house. You can move to another state. You can move to another country. But I think objectively and subjectively, you have to actually address the bigger picture to have the actual growth. Because sometimes the growth, like what Nate, I thought really actually painted very clearly in a brief way, and I do want you to answer that. But what I heard from that
You're gonna have to
is
repeat your question.
what I heard from that is that you thought your growth was stunted, and so you made a change, but because of outside factors,
You're not in the same position or a similar position.
you're back at it. You didn't actually, you changed something, but there was no growth, whether it's you or outside factors, right? We talked about the SWOT analysis on previous podcasts, and that's something that and I just said that was actually the Nicholas Perdomo III podcast. It was a great one. But
Wow. Wow.
no, I think it's no. And
I'm never coming back here again.
Thanks for tuning in, Laurel. Thanks for being here. No, I think that my point is that you always have to be on a swivel. You always have to look at the bigger picture. And I think that's something that even when I asked that, and again, not having that question of the SAT type thing where I said, this is to this versus this is to that. I think it's not that simple when it comes to life, when it comes to career, it comes to relationships, it comes to you. You can make a change, but does it actually make a progressive step in your happiness and growth?
I guess that's all subjective.
It can be.
Yeah.
But in your point, Nate, like where you said you made a career move, and all of a sudden it's been a short period of time and you already feel like you're in the same situation in a sense, or a similar situation, not same, but similar.
Yeah.
The growth isn't there because at that point you're relying on outside factors. And I think that's something that happens in relationships as well. I'm not happy in this relationship, so I'm going to change who I'm with. I'm going to change where I'm at, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to be with this person. And it's like, well, you didn't actually address necessarily
why
you were unhappy. You projected it and you didn't actually look at that. Why do you think it's subjective?
I just think everybody looks at change and growth differently. I was at a company for a long time and people were shocked. They were like, I can't believe you would change. And I go, well, I didn't really change. I'll give you a baseball reference. I went from the Cubs to the Sox in Chicago. People go,
what year?
You switched teams.
Stop. No. No.
Like 2015?
But yeah, we changed. But I mean,
you should see with the
I
Cubs.
have,
But then they wouldn't have won.
I have developed. Believe me, it was a hard choice. It is.
Yeah.
When you reach a certain point in your career, most people expected I'd be there until I retire.
Do you feel like that change you made was part of some larger growth?
Yes, I do. I think you become stagnant. When you're at a place for a long time, it becomes just, it's another day. And I think
why? Is there no challenge anymore?
Sometimes
Are you not presented with a challenge? Do you not give yourself a challenge?
When you take on a whole new a line, brands, company, it's similar, but you're learning their processes, their ways of doing things. And with me, I'm like, I'm not used to doing it this way. I mean, I've done it this way for 28 years. And they go, you're not there anymore. You're here.
Yeah.
So you have to change and adapt. Personal growth is, again, it's subjective. Have I grown? I hope so.
But you don't know.
Again, how do you measure it? Me and Laurel talked about it last night. How do you quantify it? Quantifying your growth and personal change and stuff like that, everyone does it differently. I mean, I look at people and I go, wow, this store is really excelling. And then they go, well, we're not doing a very good job or we're not growing. And I'm like, from my end, you look fine. But it's subjective. I'm looking at it from the outside. They're on the inside.
I think. Oh, go ahead, Laurel.
I was going to say, from an outside perspective, not having known you to the capacity that I know you now for really that long, I would say that your change, just knowing what I do know about you, is a sign of growth. Because, you stepped out of your comfort zone. You stepped out of something you have done for so long. So I see it as being more of an objective, like you grew because you made that change, just knowing you.
Yeah. But I tell people that, I'm still calling on the same people. I'm still with the same people in the industry. There's no hard feelings on my end.
Do you feel stagnant?
No, not now.
Why?
No,
seriously. So like, this is something that I think is very important in this topic. Is
General
that
has a lot of moving projects. I mean, it's always.
Well, I'm not even saying General versus your previous company. I'm literally talking about like you brought up the term stagnant, right? So stagnant is something that no matter if it's your personal thing with this, and I want you to address that, but that is a level of comfort that can turn into a level of stagnant feeling, right? And I think there is you may feel stripped, whether it's on your own doing or outside factors, of a creativity. The growth, I think a lot of times comes from a creativity. Like you feel like you have an impact in your own personal day to day. And this goes back to when you wake up, when you go to bed, and the hours in between, right? And how you feel when you go to bed and how you wake up, right? So if you have very little identity with your everyday life, that's the stagnant part of it, right? Comfort is fine. If you're out there, you're doing what you're doing, you're in a relationship and you feel comfort, that's fine. When it becomes stagnant for you or the other party, whether it be the company you're working for,
Somebody you're dating,
or the person you're with, this is something that now the rails are starting to come off, right? Now it's just kind of coasting down, and it's up to the road or the train tracks on whether or not it's a secure road. You know what I mean? You're just coasting. You have cruise control on. You're doing that. As soon as you feel like, or the party that is like the company that you work for, or the person you're with, as soon as they actually feel that, or you feel that it's a stagnant thing, that it's like, we're just coasting and there's no excitement anymore.
Time to make a change.
Time to make a change, or to readdress and to actually look internally and just give the attention to the ride.
Why are you feeling this way?
Why are you
What
feeling
can
this
you
way?
do?
And how do we, like, is it on me? Is it on them? Is it whatever?
Or is it both?
Or is it both? But I know that I had a job where I was just coasting for the paycheck, and this is like, I don't know what I want to do otherwise. And I was doing this, and then all of a sudden it was either them or me. And I think that's where the stagnant part comes in, and you give up a little bit. And I think there's a creativity. If you don't feel like you have your own personality to your everyday life, that's the loss.
Well,
and that's where change will happen, whether it's you or them.
Or you feel like what you have to offer is stifled where you are.
But that's where, like, getting back to Miguel, I spoke to him and I said, where you're going, where he's at now, he has a chance to excel and grow. I mean, he's there, he's making changes, he does his own thing. I think bigger companies, it's tougher to make an impact. When you're with a smaller company, the impact is faster. I mean,
more of that immediate gratification.
I think there's trust there, though.
Yes, there's a lot of trust, but his personality, like some of the reps are very outspoken. They are on it. But when you're working, the bigger a company, any company in any industry, they don't necessarily, this is how we do business. We're not going this direction. If you got someone that has other ideas, you're not at the right place. You want to go to a place where they want to grow. They want excitement. That's, I mean, like I said, this industry is unique. And I've seen people coast, and I've seen people excel. Many reps have moved from company to company. Not a bad thing. But I think some of them eventually go, okay, I've grown as far as I can here. I want to be in the industry. Where do I go at now? What do I do now? And I see it more with the younger generation, people in their 20s and 30s. Like I said, once your life passes 40, 50, you look at it a different way.
Well, I love having Laurel on right now and the role you're in right now in this industry. But I think it's, again, taking it back to the bigger picture, is that you're with Macanudo for 5 years right now, and you have this great opportunity. And you, from what I sense, I'm not putting words in your mouth, that there is a level of creativity. There's a healthy give and take. There's a lot of fun to it. There's excitement to what's going on. Still a job, right? There's still, you have to report to people, and there's some things that you might say that are like, no, again, powers that be, like, no, we're not going to do that. But it's a frame of self-awareness of where you are in life and the circumstances around you. And the same thing can go with you moving to Nashville. Same thing that you're recently married. And I look at this as something that the stagnant aspect is, that the hope is the more you learn about yourself is that you can stay ahead of it.
Yeah.
You're not in control. You're not necessarily manipulating people around you, but you are playing you're in the game. Yeah. Right. So you're in the game. So whether or not, like, it's your relationship, with you, Laurel, it's the fact that you're recently married, and I love hearing all the excitement about what you guys have done, and like moving to a new area, Nashville. You're with the same company right now, but you will wake up, like most people, realistically, you're going to wake up and you're going to feel stagnant in some aspect of it. Yeah. It's about how you respond to that. Yes. So not making irrational decisions. Like, I'm feeling restless. I'm feeling stagnant. I'm going to do something really crazy, like make a total career change everything. You change everything. And I find myself getting restless because I like change and I want to continue growing. So when I find myself getting into these positions, it's like, okay, what can we do? Like COVID, right? Sat around, it's like there's only so much you can do. You're sitting around, like you can't go socialize, like you can't go do your normal shit. And I'm like, okay, well, what if I always wanted to, do that maybe like pushes me out of my comfort zone, or a new hobby or something I want. So I try to look at it in a more rational sense and not just say, oh, I need to go do something crazy. And I mean, there's obviously different, you going from a truck driver to a barber. I mean, you came from a position, I'm sure, like, whether it been the lifestyle you were living, wanting to see your wife, your values are changing, and saying like, okay, well, this is precipitating this event of me needing to do this just like big overhaul of my life. And I, when I find myself getting into that position, I'm like, okay, what can I do to like satiate me? I'm actually sensing that right now as you're talking about it, honestly.
No, and it's just
high tensions right now.
No, and so it's like, okay, find a new hobby. Go. What?
She wants out of the garage.
Yeah, get me out of here.
Fresh air.
How long have I been here? So you have
it's been 30 minutes.
The microphone.
It's been 30 minutes. So. Oh, you're directing this now?
Yeah, of course.
So the big catalyst for me when I made the change, we have a saying that, what are you doing with your time, talent, and energy? Mm-hmm. And in my old career, I was doing nothing with that. So my time was being taken away from the job all the time. My talent was not being used. My talent is people, and I love on people, and I'm good with people in that aspect. And my energy, there's no energy in the trucking in the world, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so you're very much by yourself, I assume.
Absolutely. So I think it always comes down to where people are using their time, talent, and energies at. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are stuck because they don't take that chance to go figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so if we can take those chances, we all have talent. We all have talent somewhere. And where do you want to use it? Who do you want to use it on or with? Time is, we all have time, but how do we use it? So,
well, to that, one of the things that has kind of held me back over the last several years. So I made that change because I didn't feel my time, talent, energy was being spent properly. So I made a change. However, outside factors kind of stopped that opportunity. And so because of how I would classify it, that hurt that I experienced in that that venture not succeeding, that has actually stunted me and prevented me from making changes since that point.
You don't make the leap again.
Yes. I am more afraid to take that leap now
after you've done it
than I did 8 years ago, because I don't want to go through that again.
So it's purely not experience that again, or is it the fact where you're at in age and stage of life? or both?
Not necessarily where I'm at in life. It's just when I made that change, like initially that change was good. I was happy during that time period that I was experiencing that change. I enjoyed, so I went from working, most of our listeners know this. I went from working in a lab to being a cigar rep. And because that is something I wanted to do. And I enjoyed doing that during the time that I did that. However, because of that not working out, I have been more hesitant to make the change, not just back into that role, but into other roles as well. I've become more accepting of how you phrased it earlier, being stagnant.
Yeah.
Because I would rather be stagnant than go through the hurt again.
Yeah, I think, it's you hear that phrase of be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's a frame of mind that sometimes can lead you to great success, because it's something that, even if you had this experience you had where it's like you're hesitant to do it again. But again, that's talking about it, all right? Like, that's one of those things that, like, if we, Nate, you and I, like, based on that conversation, or anyone out there having this conversation with a friend out there, that you did it before, it didn't work out, right? But that joy you had when you did it, like, is it worth it? So there's a reflection on yourself there. But if you hold yourself back, you were so happy for that period, right? It's not a drug high, but it's something that you had this high. You had this self-worth that you were doing something that you wanted. It's a choice. Mm-hmm. It really is a choice on whether or not you want to take that step again. It may not be the same step, and you look at it as the same step. Everyone out there that you're like looking at these growth versus change type of scenarios, that if it didn't work the first time, it may have been outside factors. So what did you learn from that? Don't place blame on it. And it's something that you don't necessarily place blame on other people or other parties or on yourself, but it's not about blame. It's about the growth. It's accepting what you learned from that. And I'm guilty of it too. I mean, there is the complacency is not necessarily a stagnant thing. It's comfort. Like, so the words complacency, comfort, and being stagnant are very interchangeable on our everyday lives. And there's positive and negative connotations to that. But what I love talking about this is that you figure it out, that you realize that the next situation, the next opportunity is not always going to be, and most of the time it won't be the same opportunity if you've learned something from it, because you'll make the choice differently. You'll factor things in that you didn't factor in the first time. You're going to look at these changes as growth, which is the fun part about it. It's not just about growing as an individual. It's taking your growth opportunities and looking at the change as, no, I see the red flag here, see that, but then that's not my next growth opportunity. The next change I make is based on the previous failure, and now I can choose my next growth opportunity in a smarter way.
Yeah.
Based on scenarios and based on the people that I am putting myself out there for. This is your career. This is your personal relationships. This is your friendships. This is romantic. This is your family. This is how you, like, we didn't even dive into health, but this is the same thing. I did everything I could. I worked out 6 days a week. I worked out and I ate healthy, and all of a sudden I crashed. What'd you learn from it? I did really well for a while, and then I crashed, and I put more weight on. I have more health issues.
Now, do you think it's easier? A lot of people are sort of anti-change, right? There's this level of comfortability.
I think it's fear of unknown.
But do you think it's easier, say, career change, if you are forced to relocate somewhere else because you're in a career that is making you move? Do you think it's easier to sort of accept it or reckon with it if an outside factor is forcing you into change, or if you've made the decision to make the change yourself.
I think it's easier if it's being forced upon you.
I agree.
Because then if
you have no option,
well,
do it.
No, because
absolutely,
Then you can
it's
play
easier
an
because
outside-
survival of that. point.
because like if my company sat there and said, "Hey, for this role, you have to move to Chicago," and I made the move to our Chicago office, and it didn't work out. Internally, I could always sit there and see, if I hadn't moved to Chicago, things would be all right.
Yeah.
You made me move to Chicago.
Fear of the unknown. That's fear of the unknown. That's fear of the unknown. I look at this
but it's easier to accept. I think it's easier to place blame on the change if the change was forced upon you, as opposed, because if you choose to make the change and it doesn't work out, that's all on you.
It's on them or it's on me. You put it all on them.
Yeah.
You don't have control over it.
Yeah.
It's not about control necessarily, but it's about the fact that you put it
unhappy.
all on them. Right? Because, it's one of those things. I'll personally, and I'm not talking about where I'm at right now, but so when I was renting a house, it was post-divorce. I was renting a house in the same neighborhood. I rented a house and I had a roommate, and he's like, "Hey, let's look at renting a place after this year's up, like
I need one too.
this great apartment down in this different area." I know at that time I was very hesitant because I'm like, no, I got a home base. If we move there and we do a year lease and things don't work out, or like you move on to wherever else, now I got to figure out, I got fear of the unknown. Right. So now I have to like find another place. I had a great place. I had a lease. I had all this stuff. I had this comfort level. But if we move somewhere else and we have a great year, and all of a sudden which that roommate at the time is a great friend of mine, and all of a sudden I know, Mike. That's how it goes.
Like when I moved, I mean, I think I had a harder time with my personal relationships because we had made the decision with no outside factors.
Yeah.
So when we chose to leave our friends and our family, it was almost more difficult because I'm the one, like I was very sad. I mean, I cried on and off for like a month. I mean, I cried at my chiropractor. She's like, "Oh, I'll see you again in 6 weeks." I'm like,
I didn't mean to crack your back that way.
No. Right. And it was because it was all on me. I'm like, I'm the one making this decision. I'm the catalyst for my current unhappiness because I'm leaving everybody.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been easier to say, "Oh, General's moving me to Nashville, woe is me," than it is to say, "Oh, I am the reason for my unhappiness at this moment."
Yeah.
And it was something difficult to sort of reckon with.
You just don't want to like stir the boat. You don't want to. You don't want to muddy the waters.
Yeah.
You want this very. There's a comfort there.
Yeah. Oh, there for sure is, and I mean, I think there's. I don't know.
I think the growth is more important than the change.
Yes. I mean, you can be in the same career and grow personally, grow professionally. You can be in the same relationship and grow together. I mean, that's the problem is you have to grow together. You can't grow apart.
There's an effort.
Yeah. And obviously, if you're in a healthy relationship, it's, you're helping each other sort of grow and you're pulling and you're, sort of feeding off of each other. If you have one person that, going back to the word stagnant, right? If you have one person who's just staying in place, and I mean, it's kind of honestly what happened like with my past long-term relationship prior to me being with my now husband. Is just like, he's a great guy and we got along really well, but I continued in my perspective, right? I sort of kind of moved forward where he stayed in one place, and I'm like, we're, for a while kind of growing laterally, and then it was like, and it just
you just kind of shot off.
Yeah. It's funny, like so Bobby Crow has been on the show before. Ray Cheshire, he actually dialed into me a little bit here, and when I was talking about that, is Bobby said, "Steve, your home base hasn't changed in 10 years." Ray says only 10, and it's funny because I've learned a lot from this. Is that it's not necessarily about the things that other people think about you. It is a little bit of the comfort level, but it's the growth that sometimes it takes people. Not just me, but other people, like, Nate, you're talking about like your job and all that stuff, is that there's a balance there. If you're all about the sensation of the next step, it may work out. If you're worried about the next greatest thing, you're looking for the next greatest thing after that. So you have to have a little bit of a home base with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest part of it is that
creature comforts, right?
Well, creature comforts, but it's also about you as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one of my biggest things about the change versus growth, the topic at hand, and just as you talk about like relationships, career, or otherwise. Like, and Mike, who's been a part of this second part of the podcast, a big part of it is that the one thing I learned from him, honestly, and is that who you are as a person, and you're going to lose some things. You might lose a company or a job. You might lose a relationship. It's not being stubborn, but it's about recognizing who you are and what makes you happy. And I think that is that whole thing, the objective versus subjective. It's the change versus growth type of a comment that I made earlier, is that at a certain point, you really have to allow yourself as a person, what do you enjoy? What are you willing to sacrifice to change? Is it just change to make someone else happy or some other company happy or who you work for happy? Or is it a true growth thing where you know that if I grow from this and there is an acceptance where it is both parties, that it's something that you can actually grow from and bring the people around you up because you are that confident person who you want to be. It's not about being stubborn.
Yeah.
There is change. But that change actually, I'm of the opinion that I think growth is the most important part of it. Honestly.
Yeah.
It's not growth shadowed by your need to change. It's about growing as a person.
Now, when you made your career change, Nate, so you wanted to change so you could grow, but now you feel like you're in a similar position. Do you feel like you've grown because now you're saying you kind of want to stay in this position because you don't want to go through that hurt and you don't want to go through that upheaval? Do you think you've grown from that first experience by making that change?
I do. I know I learned a lot from
Great
that.
question.
I know I learned a lot from that experience, both positive and negative. I think what's also amazing. So when I took that role as a sales rep, and I didn't know it at the time, when I took that role, my wife in her head was like, I'm going to give him 6 months. And if things aren't good between the two of us, not that she thought I was only going to last 6 months. That's not what I mean.
But for you personally,
she was gonna give it
6 months. I'm going to say, all right, you did it.
No,
all right, come home.
She in her mind had a 6 month window. And if we were not better as a couple or, as a household after the 6 months, if I was not happier with what I was doing after 6 months, then she was going to then start nudging me to make a change.
Okay.
However, almost immediately she saw how much happier I was doing what I was doing. And so she sat there and looked at that and goes, you know what? He's a better person because he's enjoying what he's doing. And him being a better person because of his job is making him better at home. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, the trickle down effect, right?
And so even to this day, and she even said something to me today about it. Like she knows that my natural instinct and my natural gifts are towards teaching. And because of that, she's always looking at me, like you should go back into sales. Because even when you're not in a sales role, you're always talking about it like a salesperson. Like you're always teaching people. You're always educating people about what it is you do. When someone asks me like, hey, what do you do for a living? Like I explain not everything, but I explain.
You're excited.
I am. And she sees that. And she
you
sees
like the nuts and bolts.
She sees how happy that makes me. So she wants me to go back into that type of role, not necessarily in the same industry.
All right, so why don't you?
Because of my past experience. That's held me back.
Ugh.
But I've also told her, like, I would go back into that role in the cigar industry if the right opportunity came around. There have been...
You can go back into it in your industry right now.
Do what?
You could go back into it, like the sales side of it, if you wanted to apply for that.
I don't have a passion for that.
Wow.
I enjoy telling people about the industry and what it is I do, or at least in my previous role with the company. I had a little bit more passion explaining what it was I did, as opposed to now. But like, she just saw how much that made me happy. And so she wanted me to like keep doing that because she knew it would make me happy. And, you know, like I said, I've told her if the same role in the cigar industry came up again, I'd be a little bit more cautious and a little bit more picky about whether or not I took that role. Hesitant to some extent. There have been other companies that have offered me a role back in that industry.
Yeah.
But there were factors that were too similar to my previous experience that I...
What about the bourbon industry?
I've honestly never given that much of a thought.
All right, you should start doing that. So with that being said...
Here's the epiphany moment.
Yeah, it's live. Yeah, well, we'll talk next week. All right, so part 2, closing remarks. Laurel?
The only constant in life is change.
All right.
And taxes.
And taxes, right. No, and I mean, I think this is
change is a constant.
What Chinese restaurant did you eat at?
Right.
Mike, what? It was Turkish.
Yes.
So you need no.
And I think this is an important conversation to have, because I think, you know, to your point, you know, seeing, you know, your wife being able to see how your personality changed and how your just demeanor overall, like, translated to your personal life when you were doing something that you truly enjoyed. I mean, and, you know, finding that, like, what everyone always wants to find something they're passionate about. It's like, okay, can you work in an industry that you inherently like the product, right? You might like bourbon, or you might like cigars or motorcycles, or whatever it may be. But yeah, can you stand behind it? Or can you do something you really, really enjoy, whether it be connecting with people or teaching, educating, right? In maybe something you're not as passionate about as a product or an industry, but you get the opportunity to really hone in on your skills and your passion. And I don't think this is a conversation that we have necessarily in depth with a lot of people. And I think it's important to have that conversation, because I think there's a lot of topics that came up where it really makes you have that sort of self-reflection and say, okay, well, what do I have to do? Or how do I respond to something that's uncomfortable? Or how do I respond to change? Or, you know, what do I see? You know, how do I want to grow in the future? And I mean, I enjoyed this. And I think this is something that you should, the self-reflection is important. And I think we just don't have the opportunity to do that necessarily.
We do, though. We don't allow ourselves.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think we do.
Yeah.
You've been a poster child, Laurel, of what you've done in the last 5 years. Of what you know, where you're at right now, new city, stable relationship, but newer marriage.
Yeah.
These are big steps.
Yeah.
That you will be challenged on in the upcoming months and years, in my opinion, because I know how this works. And I love the attitude about that, because of what you just said to Nate.
Yeah.
Is that you have that mentality. So you deal with your own personal things. You have to have that mentality. Nate, your closing remarks.
Is it a fortune cookie?
No, I don't have anything.
Lucky numbers. Let's hear them.
13.
Ah, God damn it. Yeah. No.
Been my lucky number since 8th grade.
Not 13. I'm gonna start throwing up your number around there, like around the garage. So there's like a random guest up there. I don't know why I feel like it should be number 4, or 3, or 8, or whatever it might be. Go ahead, Nate.
So,
then I'm gonna just give you something.
So going back to the start of it, like I think a lot of us will choose change because there's an inherent growth when we make the change. Like no one wants to make a change just to be stagnant. Like that's one of the reasons why I'm not as happy in my new role as I was 4 months ago, because I actually feel like making that change, I made that change thinking it was going to be a positive growth, and it's actually gone backwards. And so that's why like I'm already looking at another change, because it's not the change I wanted.
Yeah.
The outcome is not what I want. I mean, going from because I'm still in operations, and the role I was in the last 6 years.
Cheers.
What?
You can't cheers with an empty glass.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
But no, like I started the company I'm with. I started out in a sales position, in a door-to-door residential sales position, which is like the worst type of sales. But then I made that change into operations, and that operations experience actually made me enjoy that process a little bit more. And I felt like I was able to actually do what I'm better at from an operations standpoint than I did from a sales standpoint. But there was a lack of growth within that position. So I was in that position for 6 years. And then I felt like I was stagnant. So I wanted to make a change because I felt that making that change would bring about growth. And so far it hasn't, because I went from being the busiest person on my team to the least busiest person on my team. Like I went from getting
no challenge.
Yeah. I went from getting 4 hours a week of overtime because I had so much stuff to do to doing like an hour and a half of work a week. And for me, it's like, cool, this report I do comes out every Thursday. I spend 30 minutes on it. And then Tuesday, I finish it up for another 30 minutes. Like, that's not me doing what I do best. And so every year our company has a Gallup poll survey. And one of the questions on there was, does my job allow me to do what I do best on a daily basis? Like, absolutely not.
They don't like that.
So thank God the results are anonymous. But it was 2 months after I started my new position. It's like, hey, does your job allow you the opportunity to do what you do best? Absolutely not. Like 1 to 5, that one was an absolutely not.
So that's on you that you're choosing that.
I chose the role. I did not choose how I would be trained in that role and how quickly or how slowly I would be integrated into that position. Yeah. And all I had heard about going into it was how backed up the department was and how much they needed help. And I'm like, well, this is great. Like, I'm the top performing person on the team I'm at now. I'd gotten what they call a key contributor award for 2021 in July. And then 2 weeks later, I was making this change into a new role.
Yeah.
And I'm like, eventually it drove me nuts because I was just sitting there not doing anything. And I'm not given the opportunity to do what I do best. And so that's why I'm like, I got to do something. Even though that change, if I do make another change, might hurt the team I'm on now, it's going to be good for me. And eventually it'll be good for them in the long run too.
Yeah.
Because
maybe or maybe not, but your focus is on you.
But yes, my primary focus is on me. Like, I want to make a change to make me happy. Yeah. But also, hopefully it's a learning experience for them as well. Like, you were backed up, you needed help, and I sat around for 3 months before you actually gave me the opportunity to help.
Yeah.
Like that's not good on you. That's not good on me. That's not good on the business.
You can no, you gotta
Microphone.
take the microphone, and then I'm still in charge of the show. Right? I get the last closing remarks.
We booted you.
I think this is a quote that sums it up.
Christ.
This is a quote.
Sourballs.
Wait, you Googled a quote?
Yeah.
If it's
Jerry
from
Maguire,
Rocky.
then everybody, Dickie Fox, Jerry Maguire. Here's what he said: in life, to be honest, I've failed as much as I've succeeded, but I love my wife, I love my life, and I wish you the kindest of success. And that's, it's what you wish everybody. But he had some of the best quotes.
Yeah.
On Jerry Maguire, and that's the way I look at it. I wish everybody success, but I love what I do. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here at 11 o'clock at night. I mean,
I'm sorry to put you after
hours.
I'm
getting the hint here that he.
But to be honest, Steve, if you don't love or like what you do, you're going to be miserable your whole life.
Yeah. Nice to see you.
And most people don't have let's say a vast majority of the population hate their job.
Yeah.
And
well, it's finding happiness in what you have and what you're given, right? It's the little things. It's
and to what Sourball just said, I've talked about it before. Like
thanks for closing on the show.
That kind of changes with the generations. So like my dad worked for UPS for 34 years. He did not necessarily like being a package truck driver, but why did he do it? Because it afforded his family the life that he wanted. It put food on the table, allowed him and his family to do what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Same thing with my mom. The younger generations now, like they're always, as you alluded to, Steve, with like that sales rep always changing positions every 2 years. The younger generations do that now as well. Like it may not even be a sales role, but they're just they're always looking for change. But they're not necessarily given the opportunity. They're not necessarily growing within each one of those opportunities. I
mean, I think there's some balance, right? It's somewhere in the middle. You don't want to do something, I mean, I guess in my opinion, for so long being unhappy, right? You want to make that change to better yourself. But so there's both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Making the change every year, 2, 3, whatever, just for the sake of change because you're just restless and you don't know how to sort of work within your confines. But then also, do, if you can, better yourself and do something that makes you happy. So, I mean, I think there's kind of finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
But, you find the stability, right? Supporting the family, having the set hours, having the means to do what your parents wanted to do and what they wanted to do for your family. I mean, there's definitely value in that. So it's just kind of finding that middle ground.
You always have to take care of your bills, right? I mean, this is talk about the home base. You always have to take care of yourself, right? So you have to take care of the bills, people around you. There's not always the sunny disposition to what you're doing on an everyday basis. But there's an education level. There's a there's a realization. The growth versus change thing. I encourage everyone to strive for growth because change will come with that, and I think I firmly believe in that. I've been one of those people that have waited for change to be confronted with me, and I've been fortunate to enjoy the life that has been laid out in front of me since then. I don't think that everyone has that opportunity. I think that I'm of the opinion that if you are always striving for growth versus change versus the opposite where you're striving for change over growth, this is a mentality change or a mindset that the growth should be this over-encompassing factor that will bring apart change. Nate, with your job right now and all that stuff, is you talk about this. The biggest takeaway I have on what you said was the fact that, honestly, like a lot of people out there, you're scared to do it again.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I'm not going to deny it.
Yeah, which is natural. Laurel, doing your thing. You're doing your thing. You said you're 30 now. You did the 5 years in the retail. You 5 years with Macanudo. You made a big change, and you don't make a big deal out of it.
Oh, I did. I mean,
on tonight's episode, you did not. On the show tonight, you didn't, and maybe that's something that you've just absorbed, and you were panicked as fuck.
Oh, for sure. I mean, when we first moved, hopefully my husband is not watching this. When we first moved and we pulled in, so my mother-in-law and I drove in one car with the cats, and then Alex towed one of our trailers, and then my father-in-law towed another one of our trailers, and so Mary Jo and I had gotten there first, and
she watched the last time you were on, right?
Yes. So
Huge fan of the show.
I had sort of because the day before we left, I did the final rounds. I saw my mom and my grandma and my dad and my best friend, and
for the last time.
You
make it seem like it's the last time.
You know what I mean. I'm actually going back to freaking the Milwaukee area this upcoming weekend for a Halloween party. But
perfect.
And it was, I had already the week leading up to it had sort of come to terms with the fact that we were making this big move, and and I get in the scheme of things, it wasn't the biggest move, right? It's 10 hours from where I grew up. It
is huge.
But I mean, statistically, I think it's only 25% of people move within 40 miles of where they grew up.
Comfort level.
Yeah. And so I had sort of already grappled with this change. And so by the time I had pulled into the driveway, I'm excited because it's this new adventure. Whereas Mary Jo and I had kind of talked it out on the drive there, and I had gone and done my goodbyes with my parents the week leading up to it, where his parents were physically helping us move. So when we pulled in or when him and Mark finally got there and we were unloading everything, I could just see it on him.
Yeah.
And I was like, how you doing? And he's like, did we make a mistake? And I said, you've been here for 10 minutes, man. Let's take a walk. And so we kind of walked around the neighborhood, and I was like, how you doing? He's like, I just don't know. It's it's all super overwhelming, and I don't know if we've made the right decision. I'm like, trust me, I've had this internal struggle for a very long time. And
you didn't show it.
But it's just, I don't really outwardly express those emotions.
You should.
And so I had kind of already come to terms with it. He just was a week behind me. And so
week or
a day,
months
2 days. Yeah. And so
years.
it definitely, I mean, it was really difficult. And like I said, I mean, I was very, very emotional for the last month, and just on and off. And
what I'll say is that change like that can lead to growth.
Yeah. And we have good personalities to do it. We get along. Obviously, we're married, right? So you should get along with your partner. But I think
you hope to.
You hope, right? And I said, look, it's going to be hard. We're going to obviously have to make new friends and, find our new, just, the comforts of having your restaurants and having your cigar shops and having just your day-to-day things that make you feel comfortable. But we can be just the two of us and not drive each other absolutely batty. We can take the time to meet the people and grow our friends and not hate each other. So
what I love about that is that you I don't know what's going on. The audience.
Okay, Peanut Gallery, what's happening over here?
Don't worry about it.
You don't want to know.
We're deep into the podcast.
And bottle.
And the bottle. And Tony's gonna be, he'll be fine. I know. Yeah. What I like about that is that you made the leap. And sometimes, again, the growth versus change is always it's a polar push. It's not equal. It's not even. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
it's so tough that when you get to that point, when you personally need to make a change, you need to address the growth. Nate, you talked about growth mostly. Laurel, you talked about change. Things are going well, you make a change.
Mm-hmm.
Things aren't going well, you're looking for growth. I talked about this earlier, is that I really think that that growth is the goal.
Yeah.
I honestly think that when you guys out there look at this, is that you need to make a change because of negative aspects in your life. It's not always subjective.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you really need to realize, if you need to make a change in your life, the subjective ways, the feelings, might be encompassing some of the shortcomings of what was coming if you make a change. So the growth is going to be stunted by that. I look at it as that you always look at growth first, and you have that mentality, the positive mentality, that you always are looking for mentality changes for you and your partner, your company, and everything else. Is that if you are honest about trying to make the greater good, you're trying to grow things for you and everyone else. Like, I think there's everyone's going to make money. Everyone's going to make more happiness. There's everyone that's you're always going to make positive change. If you're looking for just change in general, you have recessed back to your shortcomings. And that's what I'll say. I think this is a great topic, that change or growth is important. But I will say that growth will encompass change if you do it the right way, if you actually self-reflect, if you actually want better out of your life and the people around you. If you just go for change, it's short, and you will fail again.
Is that the closing remark?
That was my closing
Okay.
remarks. I finally got to get it. Yeah, Jesus. Happy
I had to pour more since I didn't cheers, apparently.
Happy Wisconsin. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Mike drew it out.